Hey everyone, tonight we'll delve into a question that sounds simple, but has implications that ripple through every myth and legend you've ever been told. We think we know the great deceivers, the tricksters, the silver-tongued gods, who brought chaos and laughter in equal measure. But what if the greatest liar wasn't known for his clever words or elaborate pranks? What if the most powerful god of lies was one whose name you've never heard, for the simple, chilling reason that his greatest lie was himself? You stand on the edge of a cosmic precipice, watching the loom of fate weave the tapestry of existence, threads of gold for heroes, threads of shadow for villains. But you notice something unsettling. It's not a thread being cut or a color being changed. It's the gaps. Tiny, imperceptible voids in the fabric of reality where a thread should have been, but is now just nothing. This is a story about that nothing, an emptiness more powerful than any presence. You probably won't want to believe what you are about to hear, because it suggests the very bedrock of our oldest stories is a carefully constructed illusion. So, before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now close your eyes. Imagine the ancient mountains, their peaks shrouded in the mists of primeval time, and let's unravel this epic tale together. There is a power in a whisper that a roar can never achieve. A roar demands attention. It forces you to turn, to react, to defend. It is an honest declaration of force. A whisper, however, slides into the ear unnoticed, planting a seed of an idea that you will later believe was your own. It doesn't fight your thoughts. It becomes them. And in the divine realms, where thought can shape reality, a whisper can unmake the world. We have been taught to look for the loud liars, the gods whose deceptions were theatrical and grand. But we were looking in the wrong place. The true master of falsehood doesn't need a stage. His power lies not in the lies he tells, but in the truths he silently erases. Imagine the great library of Alexandria, not as it burned, but in the silent moments afterward. The real tragedy wasn't the smoke and flames that was just a spectacle. The real tragedy was the silence that followed, the knowledge that was no longer there, the questions that could no longer be answered because the answers had turned to ash. It wasn't just the loss of scrolls. It was the amputation of a piece of human consciousness. Entire histories, philosophies, and scientific discoveries vanished, leaving a void. We feel the echo of that loss even today, a phantom limb of knowledge. Now imagine a being whose very essence is to create that same effect, not with fire, but with a will that plucks truths from existence as easily as you might pluck a string on a harp. This forgotten god, whose name we will come to know as Apateon, understood a fundamental cosmic principle. Reality is a consensus. The sun rises because everything from the smallest dust mote to the consciousness of gods and mortals agrees that it does. The past happened because memory confirms it. But what if a power could subtly edit that consensus without anyone's consent? What if it could introduce a single, silent no into the universal yes? This is not a lie of invention, like claiming to have slain a beast you never fought. This is a lie of alteration. It is the difference between painting a forgery and reaching back in time to guide the original artist. S-hand, to paint your version instead. One is a lie you can expose by comparing it to the original. The other is the original. There is nothing to compare it to. This is the terrifying nature of Apateon's power. He didn't create falsehoods. He created new, alternate truths and erased the old ones from the cosmic record. The gods themselves possess artifacts of immense, often bizarre, power. Consider an object whispered about in the forgotten corners of Greek mythology, the scepter of antiversion. It is not a weapon nor a tool of creation. When held, it doesn't show you the future or the past. Instead, it forces your mind to experience every possible outcome of a single decision you are about to make, all at once. A king holding it before signing a treaty would simultaneously live through the 100 years of peace it brings, and the catastrophic war its alternative wording might cause. The result isn't wisdom, it's paralysis. A feedback loop of infinite consequence that leaves the holder unable to make any choice at all. It's a tool of perfect inaction. Apateon's power is like a universal, unseen version of that scepter. He doesn't just show the possibilities. He chooses one, implements it, and makes it so the other possibilities never even existed. The lie is so complete that the universe itself believes it. So you are standing there on that imagined mountain peak, looking not at the gods you know, but at the spaces between them. You feel a subtle chill, the kind that has nothing to do with the air temperature. It's the cold dread of realizing that the map of your world, the very history you trust, might have been subtly, undetectably redrawn. The names of heroes you celebrate might be wrong. The causes of wars you study might be fabrications. The very nature of the gods you worship could be an elaborate cover story for a truth so monumental that erasing it was the only way to survive. But the question that remained, hanging in the silent air like an unspoken dread, was this. If a lie is so perfect that it replaces truth entirely, is it still a lie? That feeling of a redrawn map is unnerving, isn't it? It's the sense that the ground beneath your feet isn't as solid as you believed. So let's step away from that dizzying precipice of the unknown and walk into a hall you know well. You can almost hear the roar of the fire in the central hearth, feel the warmth of mead on your tongue, and see the flicker of firelight on shields hanging from oaken rafters. You are in Sessarumnir, the great hall of Asgard, and a familiar figure is holding court. He is handsome, with a spark of fire in his eyes and a smile that never quite reaches them. This is Loki, the god of mischief, the name that leaps to mind whenever we speak of divine deception. To understand the forgotten god, we must first have a baseline. We must understand the lies we know before we can confront the ones we don't. Loki's brand of chaos is loud, personal, and profoundly theatrical. His lies are not silent edits to reality. They are firecrackers thrown into a solemn assembly. Think of his most famous deed, the shearing of Sif's golden hair. He doesn't do it for any grand cosmic purpose. He does it out of a whim, a malicious impulse. Perhaps fueled by too much mead and a flash of jealousy at the sight of something so perfectly beautiful. The act is tangible. Sif is left weeping, her head bare. Thor is enraged, his fury a thunderstorm contained within the hall. The consequence is immediate and personal. Loki, to save his own skin, is forced into a wager with the dwarves, a frantic, desperate scheme that results by accident. In the creation of Asgard's greatest treasures, Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, Odin's spear, Gungnir, and Frey's ship, Eskablanir. His lie, his act of mischief, creates a physical, measurable result. You can hold the hammer. You can see the ship. His deception leaves fingerprints. Or consider the wall of Asgard. The gods make a deal with a giant to build a wall around their realm in an impossibly short time, with the goddess Freya as payment. When the giant, with the help of his powerful stallion Svaelfari, is about to succeed, it is Loki who intervenes. He whispered doubt into the giant's mind, or subtly changed the stones to make them brittle. No, Loki's method is far stranger and more direct. This is the bizarre detail that defines his nature. He transforms himself into a beautiful mare, a physical lie, and seduces the stallion, luring it away from its work. The giant fails, the wall is built, and Freya is safe. But months later, Loki returns to Asgard and gives birth to an 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, who will become Odin's own steed. His lie has a biological consequence. It is a strange, messy, and undeniable truth born from a physical falsehood. Apateon would have simply made the gods remember the wall always being there. Loki leaves behind an 8-legged horse as evidence of his meddling. This physicality is key. Loki's lies are an engagement with the world, not a rewriting of it. He is a god of invention, not erasure. His children are further proof. With the giantess Angrboda, he fathers a trio of monsters that will bring about the god's doom: the great wolf Fenrir, the world-encircling serpent, Jarmungandr, and Hel, the half-dead queen of the underworld. These are not illusions. They are living, breathing entities, tangible threats born from his rebellious nature. They are problems the gods must chain, fight, and bargain with. Historically, Loki's own story is a fascinating legend of shifting truth. In the earliest fragments of Norse poetry, he is often a companion to Thor and Odin, a trickster who gets them into trouble, but also cleverly gets them out. He is a necessary agent of chaos, a catalyst. But as time went on, particularly as Norse culture came into contact with Christianity, his portrayal darkened. Storytellers like Snorri Sturluson, writing centuries after the Viking Age, cast him in a more sinister, most satanic light, the adversary, the source of all woe. It is as if mortals themselves, in trying to understand him, kept changing the story. His lie is so potent, it even infects his own narrative across human history. Yet even at his most malevolent, Loki's actions have a clear motive you can trace: envy, boredom, pride, or simple self-preservation. When he engineers the death of Baldur, the most beloved of the gods, he does so with a physical object, a spear made of mistletoe, the one thing that had not sworn an oath to leave Baldur unharmed. He gives it to the blind god Hr. There is a weapon, perpetrator, a victim, and a motive: jealousy of Baldur's perfection. The grief that follows is real. The funeral is a grand and tragic affair. And Loki's punishment, being bound beneath the earth with snake venom dripping onto his face, is a physical torment for a physical crime. He is caught, he is understood, he is punished. His lies, however clever, exist within the rules of cause and effect. You see the pattern? Loki's power is the power of the masterful actor, the brilliant improviser, the con artist who can talk his way into and out of any situation. He adds to the story, he complicates the plot, he introduces new characters and props. He is the ultimate catalyst. His lies are challenges hurled at the face of truth, daring it to a duel. But the question that begins to form in the back of your mind as the firelight dances in the Asgardian hall is a deeply unsettling one. Loki's lies were battles he waged with truth, always leaving a victor and a vanquished. But what if a lie wasn't a weapon, but the battlefield itself? Now, leave the firelit hall of Asgard, with its boisterous shouts and clashing horns. Let the warmth fade from your skin and the smell of roasting boar leave your senses. You are stepping out, not into another place, but into an absence of place. You are in the cold, silent space between the worlds, the dark canvas upon which the star-flecked pantheons are painted. It is here in the profound quiet where truth and falsehood have not yet been defined that we can finally speak the name. It is a name that feels like a forgotten secret on your tongue, a word that tastes of dust and echoes. His name is Apateon. This is not a name you will find in the grand sagas or heroic epics. His victories were never celebrated, his defeats never recorded, for his entire existence was the antithesis of a record. While Loki, the god you know, was a master of fraud and trickery, a grand performer on the world stage, Apateon was the stage manager who, in the dead of night, rewrote the entire play, changed the sets, and edited the memories of the actors themselves. By morning, they were performing a new story, believing it was the one they had always known. He is the shadow god, and his domain is not the simple, spoken falsehood. It is the very architecture of doubt. He is not a god of lies. He is a god of the lie, the singular, foundational untruth upon which a million other false realities can be built. In the ancient Greek world, from which his name is derived, they had a concept for beings like him, daemons. These weren't gods to be worshipped on high Olympian thrones, nor were they monsters to be slain. They were the personification of a concept itself. There was a daimon of love, of fear, of death, and of truth. Apateon was born of this idea, the living embodiment of deceit, as the Greeks named the spirit. But he was more than just a spirit of guile or fraud. He was the quiet, creeping realization that the floor beneath your feet might be an illusion, that the memories you cherish might be implants, that the love you feel might be a script written by an unseen author. Loki's tricks were additions. He gave Sif hair of black, he gave Odin an 8-legged horse, he gave the world monsters. Apateon's work was subtraction. He didn't add a lie. He removed a truth, leaving a perfectly shaped void that the universe, in its abhorrence of a vacuum, would rush to fill with a new, plausible reality. His power was not to make you believe a falsehood, but to make you doubt a truth so profoundly that you discard it yourself as illogical. It is a far more insidious, far more powerful form of deception. Loki's lies could be disproven. How do you disprove a new reality when all the evidence of the old one has been erased from existence? His symbol, whispered among the few entities who even suspected his existence, was a bizarre and terrifyingly simple thing. While other gods had lightning bolts, tridents, or hammers, Apation's sigil was the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, but with a horrifying difference: the snake was invisible. His symbol was just a perfect, empty circle. It represented a self-contained paradox, a logic loop that consumed itself, a memory that had been so perfectly erased that even the memory of the erasure was gone. It was the shape of a hole in the world. It was a symbol of nothing, and therefore it was everywhere and nowhere at once. Other gods could not comprehend it. Their minds, built on presence and substance, recoiled from the sheer conceptual emptiness of it. This is why he was forgotten, or why he was made to be forgotten. A being whose power is to rewrite consensus can only be defeated by a new, stronger consensus. His existence was not a battle, but a philosophical disease, a sickness of certainty. Imagine a plague that didn't kill you, but slowly convinced you that you were never born, and you, in your perfect health, agreed and simply faded away. That was the threat of Apateon. He didn't break the rules of reality. He showed the gods that the rules were merely suggestions they had all agreed upon, and that he could, at any moment, suggest something new. The war against such a being could not be fought with swords or sorcery. It had to be fought with belief itself. You begin to feel the scale of the problem, the sheer impossibility of the fight. It's like trying to punch a shadow or build a dam to hold back a bad idea. His very nature was a paradox, a being of immense power whose ultimate goal was to make you believe he had no power at all, or better yet, that he never was. But the question that begins to form in the cold, silent void around you is one that strikes at the very heart of your own identity. How do you fight an enemy whose final victory is marked by you forgetting the war was ever fought? You're standing in that silent, star-dusted void, the name Apateon, a cold weight in your mind. But every name has a history, a lineage. Gods, like kings, are defined by their parentage. You know the stories. You know that Zeus is the son of Kronos, whom he overthrew. You know that Odin is the son of Buro and the giantess Besla, a union of two distinct lineages that created the ruler of Asgard. Gods are born of other gods, of titans, of giants, of primordial forces that have names and forms. Their family trees are sprawling, complicated things, filled with rivalry, love, and betrayal. They are a network of cause and effect. So you search the cosmic record for Apation's parents. You look for a father, a mother, a creator, and you find nothing. A perfect, absolute blank. There is no lineage. There is no family tree. Because Apateon was not born, he coalesced. To understand this, you must travel further back. You must go to the time of the true beginning, which was not a bang, but a silence. It is a silence so profound, it is a presence in itself, a thick velvet darkness that has no dimension.
Ow.
In this state, there is no is and no is not. There is no light because darkness has not been defined as its opposite. It is a state of pure, undifferentiated potential, a cosmic quietude. Then something happens, a flicker. The first thought, the first distinction. Perhaps it is Gaia, the earth, simply becoming aware of herself as a separate entity from the void. It does not matter what it was. What matters is that, for the first time, there was a fact, a truth. I exist. This is solid. This is cold. In that single, monumental instant of self-definition, the universe was born. But in that same instant, something else was born alongside it, a shadow. For the moment, a truth exists. The possibility of its absence also comes into being. The moment the universe declares, "This is it," simultaneously creates the phantom concept of "this is not." Every act of creation is also an act of exclusion. By choosing one reality, all other potential realities are discarded. They become ghosts, echoes of what might have been. And it was from this vast, silent ocean of discarded possibilities. He was not born of Nyx, the night, or Erebus, the darkness. They were presences, entities. He was born of their absence. He is the god of the gap, the patron deity of the footnote that was never written, the patron of the path not taken. He is the living embodiment of the alternate reality. Imagine, for a moment, the bizarre mythological artifact known as the Kronos cloth. It is said to be a tapestry woven not from thread, but from moments. Each fiber is a single second, stolen from a history that was erased. One thread might be the cool afternoon breeze from a timeline where a great hero decided not to go to war. Another might be the glint of sunlight on a cup of wine from a wedding that never happened. The cloth itself has no pattern. It is a chaotic jumble of disconnected sensations. To touch it is to experience 1,000 conflicting memories at once, a dizzying vertigo of lives you never lived. It is an object of profound and useless sadness. Apateon did not need such an artifact. He was the artifact. His very consciousness was woven from these lost moments. He was born from the first cosmic silence where truth was absent, and he carried that silence with him. While other gods announced themselves with thunder and light, his presence was a deadening of sound, a subtle muting of color, a feeling of sudden and inexplicable doubt. He was the universe's first and most profound secret. The other primordial gods, chaos, Gaia, erasure, forces of generation, they were the architects of what is. Apateon was the quiet, unseen force that defined the shape of reality by representing everything it was not. This is the source of his unique and terrifying power. He does not need to convince you of a lie, because his very being is a testament to the fact that the truth you hold is arbitrary. It is just one choice among an infinite number of others. His whispers are not falsehoods. They are reminders of other equally valid truths that were simply not chosen. He can show a god the life he might have had if he had not been born a god. He plants not lies, but a seed of regret so profound it blossoms into a tree of existential doubt, whose roots can crack the very foundations of a soul. And the most chilling part? He does not have to be malicious. He simply has to be. But the question that now hangs in this primordial stillness, heavier than any mountain, is this. If a god can be born from nothing, from a simple absence, then what does that say about the substance of reality itself? And what would be the first act of such a being? You are adrift in that primordial stillness, contemplating a being born from absence. What would such an entity do? What is the first impulse of a god whose very nature is the antithesis of truth? You might expect a grand gesture, a declaration of his own existence, a challenge to the nascent order of the cosmos. But Apateon's power, born from silence, operates in silence. It was a lie so subtle, so profound, that it went entirely unnoticed, and in doing so, became the most perfect lie ever told. Imagine the universe in its infancy. The raw, violent energies of creation have begun to cool. The most basic of these is the law of light. Photons burst forth from newly kindled stars, traveling in perfectly straight lines at a speed that is absolute and inviolable. In the heavens, the first constellations are being sketched out. The ancient Greeks would later imagine these as heroes and beasts placed upon a solid bronze dome, their positions eternal and unchanging. Any shift in this celestial map would be a sign of cosmic chaos, a deep sacrilege against the established order. The stars were the embodiment of divine truth, fixed, reliable, and eternal. It is upon this perfect, orderly canvas that Apateon performs his first act. He drifts through the silent void, an intelligence without form, and observes this new machine of reality. He feels the unwavering pulse of light from a billion new suns. He sees the fates weaving the paths of planets and comets. And he feels not malice, but a kind of intellectual curiosity. He sees a system built on axioms, on unshakable truths, and his very being, composed of all the truths that were discarded, feels compelled to test them. He turns his attention to a single, unremarkable star. It is a pinprick of blue-white light in a fledgling constellation that will one day be used by mortal navigators to cross vast oceans. But for now, it is just a star, one among countless others. Apateon does not reach out to move the star. He does not snuff out its light or cause it to go nova. Such acts are crude, the work of lesser beings who deal in physical destruction. Apateon's domain is far more fundamental. He chooses to lie to reality itself. He focuses his will not on the star, but on the light that has already left it. He targets a single beam, a river of photons already halfway across the galaxy, and he performs a subtle, impossible act. Introduces a pause. For a span shorter than a heartbeat, he he makes the light lag, stretching its path through space-time by an infinitesimal fraction. It is as if he convinced the light to hesitate, to doubt its own nature for just a moment before continuing on its way. The beam of light eventually arrives at its destination, perhaps the nascent eye of a slumbering titan or the cooling crust of a new world, but it arrives a femtosecond late. The consequence is nothing. There is no explosion, no ripple in the fabric of space. The star still shines. The universe continues its expansion. No one, not even the gods who set the laws of light and motion, detects the discrepancy. But a cosmic precedent has been set. The star's perceived position, as determined by its light, is now a lie. It is not where it appears to be. The delay is microscopic, but the principle is monumental. Universal constant has been proven to be variable. A law has been bent. This first silent act is echoed in the myth of a bizarre and forgotten artifact, the celestial calibrator. It was not an orrery that modeled the heavens. It was said to be a device that tuned them. It was a complex gyroscope of crystal and solidified light, and its purpose was to ensure the stars remained in their proper places. Legend says that once every eon the calibrator would shudder, its perfect hum faltering for just a second. During that second, a single star somewhere in the cosmos would appear to flicker, not because its light had dimmed, but because its reality had momentarily stuttered. The priests who guarded the device believed it was correcting a cosmic error. They never suspected it was the echo of the first time an error was deliberately introduced. The lie was flawless. It was a crime with no evidence, a victim who didn't know it was harmed, and a perpetrator who had no form. It established Apateon's core philosophy. Why create a clumsy falsehood when you can subtly corrupt the truth itself? Why argue with reality when you can edit its memory? He had not broken the law of light. He had simply demonstrated that it was a consensual agreement, and he had not consented. The star's path was now a testament to his power, a tiny, permanent monument to the first cosmic lie. Hidden in plain sight for eternity, you stand there now, looking up at a sky you thought you knew, a sky full of stars that have guided humanity for millennia. You feel a new kind of chill, a deep intellectual dread. You prove that even the messenger could be made to lie. The act was small, a quiet nudge to a single star's journey. You've just witnessed a lie on a cosmic scale, a silent, surgical incision into the very laws of physics. It's a terrifying thought, but it's also abstract. So now, let us bring it down from the stellar plane and place it on the ground where the gods walk and bleed. Let's weigh the power of Apateon's invisible design against the tangible theatrical tricks of Loki. The difference is not merely one of degree. It is a fundamental difference in the very definition of deception. It is the difference between a master craftsman and a master architect. One builds a clever counterfeit. The other designs a new reality. Turn with your mind to Asgard. Not to a quiet moment, but to its most dramatic and uncomfortable feast. This is the scene of the Lokascena, Loki's great verbal assault. He is uninvited, but he strides into the hall anyway. He is the ultimate party crasher. One by one, he insults every god and goddess present. He accuses Freya of sleeping with every being in the room, reminds Odin of his practice of unmanly magic, taunts Thor for his past embarrassments. These are not subtle whispers. They're direct, venomous accusations designed for maximum impact. The effect is immediate and explosive. The feast descends into chaos. Gods are enraged. Threats are made. Thor finally arrives, and his presence is the only thing that silences Loki. This is Loki's art form in its purest state. It is a performance. His lies are weapons, verbal javelins thrown with precision to wound pride and disrupt order. The consequences are clear. The god's fury, his own flight from the hall, and the beginning of the hunt that will lead to his binding. You can follow the chain of cause and effect as easily as following a trail of broken furniture. Now, imagine Apateon in the same hall. He would not speak a word. He would not need to. Instead of accusing Freya of infidelity, Apateon would simply reach into the conceptual firmament and subtly adjust her divine portfolio. He would not change her, but change what she is. The goddess of love and beauty would suddenly find herself the goddess of fond remembrance and aesthetic appreciation. She would still be beautiful, still be revered, but the passionate, life-giving fire at her core would be gone, replaced by a gentle, sterile warmth, and no one would notice. Odin would not remember her ever being different. Thor would feel no rage, only a vague and inexplicable sense of loss when he looked at her. Loki himself would have no accusation to make, for the truth he would have twisted was no longer the truth. Apateon's design is not an event, it's a revision. He doesn't cause chaos within the system, he rewrites the system's source code. This reveals the fundamental difference in scale. Loki's tricks, however grand, operate within the existing rules of reality. When he turns into a mare, he is using a known, if rare, divine ability of shapeshifting. When he uses mistletoe to kill Baldur, he is exploiting a known loophole in an oath. He is a brilliant player of the game, finding every exploit and weakness in the rules. Apateon, however, isn't playing the game. He is the one who silently redesigns the game board overnight. Loki's lies are finite. The damage can be assessed. The treasures he accidentally creates can be held. The children he fathers can be fought. His impact, however large, is a ripple in the pond of reality. Apateon's impact is to change the chemical composition of the water itself. The ripples behave differently forever after, but no one remembers the water ever being any other way. Think of it like this. Loki is a master forger. He can create a perfect replica of a hero's sword, so flawless that it fools everyone, and use it to start a war. But the original sword still exists somewhere. The lie can, in principle, be exposed. Apateon is not a forger. He is a being who can reach back to the moment the sword was being forged in the heart of a star and whisper a new design to the divine blacksmith. The sword that emerges is the one Apateon wanted. It is not a fake. It is the original. There is no other version to compare it to. This is the chasm between their powers. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato spoke of a concept he called the noble lie, a myth or untruth told by a society's rulers to maintain social harmony or to encourage a certain kind of civic virtue. It was a lie told for the perceived greater good. In a way, this is humanity's clumsy philosophical attempt to grasp the kind of power Apateon wields naturally. But Apateon's lies have no motive, noble or otherwise. They're not for the good of the cosmos, or simply expressions of his nature, the nature of what is not challenging what is. There's a legend of a bizarre artifact, the scales of consequence, 2 golden plates hanging by chains of ethereal silver. They do not weigh mass, they weigh impact. If you were to place a symbol of Loki's theft of Sif's hair on one plate, the scales would dip, measuring the weight of Thor's rage. The dwarves' labor and the creation of 6 mighty treasures. The weight is heavy, but finite. But if you were to try and place a symbol of Apateon's first lie, that imperceptible delay in a single beam of starlight, the scales would not move. They would simply shatter, would crumble into dust, because the concept of a finite consequence does not apply. The consequence of that first lie wasn't an event. It was a permanent alteration to the definition of truth. The weight is infinite because it is woven into everything that came after. So you see the difference? Loki gives you a tangible prank, a puzzle to solve, a mess to clean up. His lies are loud, demanding, and ultimately comprehensible. Apateon offers only a silent, perfect, new reality. He leaves no puzzle, no mess. Only a faint subconscious feeling that something is wrong. A cosmic Mandela effect that you can't quite put your finger on. Which then is the greater act of divine hubris, to loudly and brazenly defy the established order with a trick. Or to silently and perfectly rewrite that order so that your will becomes the new, unquestioned establishment. Every god of consequence possesses an artifact that is a reflection of their very soul. Thor has Mjolnir, a hammer as blunt, powerful, and reliable as he is. Odin has Gungnir, a spear that never misses, embodying his relentless pursuit of knowledge and victory. Hades has his helm of darkness, allowing him to move unseen, a perfect tool for a ruler who governs a realm just beyond mortal perception. These are objects of power, yes, but more than that. They are extensions of divine will, tools perfectly suited to their owner's nature. So, what of Apateon? What bizarre, unsettling artifact would belong to a god born of absence, a being whose power is the silent erasure of truth? His tool would not be a weapon to smite his enemies, or a shield to defend his realm. It would be something far more subtle and psychologically devastating. It was an object known only in the most fractured and terrified of whispers as the Eidolon mirror. The name itself is a clue. An eidolon in the ancient Greek understanding is not just a reflection. It is a phantom image, a spectral double, the ghost of a living person. It is the shape of you, but hollow, an echo made visible. This was the nature of Apateon's mirror. It was not forged from silver or polished obsidian. It was a swirling, disc-shaped portal of captured starlight and solidified paradox, and its surface showed nothing. It did not reflect the room you were in, nor the face of the one who gazed into it. It was a blind, milky void. But the moment a being of consciousness, mortal or divine, looked into it with a question in their heart, a regret on their soul, its true, terrifying function was revealed. The Eidolon mirror does not show you what is, does not show you what was, like a magical recording. It does not even show you what will be, like the scrying glasses of oracles. Its function is infinitely more cruel. The Eidolon mirror shows you, with perfect sensory clarity, what could have been. Imagine a great king, renowned for his wisdom and justice, who once in his youth had to choose between claiming his throne and running away with the woman he loved. He made his choice for duty and has ruled well for 50 years. If he looks into the Eidolon mirror, he will not see his crowned and aged face. He will see a small, sun-drenched cottage by the sea. He will feel the warmth of the sun on his unburdened shoulders. He will hear the laughter of children, his children playing in the surf. He will feel the memory of a love that never faded. He is shown not a fantasy, but a perfectly rendered, tangible reality that was simply one choice away. He experiences, for a fleeting, eternal moment, the full weight of the happiness he sacrificed. The mirror does not lie to him. It tells him a deeper, more personal truth, that his entire reality, his life's work, his kingdom, is built upon a single no to a different, equally valid life. You can see the insidious genius of this artifact. It is Apateon's philosophy made manifest. It doesn't create a falsehood. It weaponizes a discarded truth. It doesn't need to invent a lie to cause despair. It simply holds up the ghost of a different reality and forces you to compare. While many cultures feared mirrors could trap a soul or act as a portal for spirits, the Eidolon mirror was a portal to a far more dangerous place, the landscape of your own regret. It didn't trap your soul. It showed your soul what it had lost, making your current existence feel like the prison. Unlike the pool that ensnared Narcissus by showing him a perfect image of himself, fueling his vanity until it killed him, the Eidolon mirror did the opposite. It erased the self. It showed you the you that you are not, and in doing so, hollowed out the you that you are. Gods, whose very identities are forged by grand, unshakable narratives of their own making, were uniquely vulnerable to this. A war god might see the peaceful scholar he could have become. The goddess of wisdom might see the carefree nymph she might have been. The mirror's reflection was a poison of doubt, injected directly into the heart of a being's self-concept. This was Apateon's art. He didn't need to fight the gods with force. He could simply show them the ghosts of their other selves, the idola of their discarded lives, and let them tear themselves apart with the existential weight of their own choices. The mirror was his whisper made visible. It was the ultimate tool of psychological warfare, an artifact that could dismantle a god from the inside out without ever telling a single lie. Loki might trick a god for a day, but a single glance into the Eidolon mirror could haunt a god for eternity. The question that hangs in the air, shimmering like the mirror's own impossible surface, is a deeply troubling one. What grand, terrifying tapestry of doubt does a god with such a tool intend to weave into the fabric of the cosmos? You have seen the nature of Apateon's power, encapsulated in the cruel genius of the Eidolon mirror tool that dismantles the soul with the ghosts of discarded truths. But an artifact, however powerful, is still a contained thing. Now you must witness what happens when that same power is unleashed not on a single mind, but on the grand clockwork machinery of the cosmos itself. This is the story of Apateon's first great design, a deception so vast and fundamental that it dwarfs any prank or plot Loki could ever conceive. This is the tale of the sun's stolen day. In every culture across every continent, humanity has looked to the sky and seen a story. Most often, it is a story of pursuit, of a cosmic chase between the sun and the moon. In Norse lands, the wolf skull and hati relentlessly hunt the celestial orbs, and an eclipse marks the terrifying moment they almost succeed. In Vietnam, a great frog is said to devour the sun. The Inca, an eclipse was a jaguar attacking the moon. These are stories of violence, of conflict, of a physical struggle against the divine order. They are loud, dramatic, and terrifying. Apateon had no need for such brutish theatrics. He did not need to devour the sun. He only needed to make it forget. Imagine the sun and moon not as simple spheres of rock and fire, but as conscious beings, the primordial gods Helios and Selene. Their existence is a dance, an eternal, flawless choreography that has defined time since its inception. Helios, blazing in his golden chariot, begins his ascent in the east. His is a journey of glorious, life-giving power. As he reaches his zenith and begins his descent, a silent cosmic signal is passed to his sister Selene. She waits on the far horizon, her silver chariot ready. The moment he slips below the western edge of the world, she begins her calm, gentle arc across the star-dusted sky. Theirs is a perfect, unbroken rhythm. Day hands its baton to night. Light gives way to shadow. It is the most fundamental promise in the universe, the heartbeat of reality. Apateon decided to see what would happen if that heartbeat skipped. He did not attack Helios. He did not block Selene's path. He simply reached into the silent, conceptual space between them, the moment of handover, and introduced a flicker of his own essence, a perfect, absolute nothing. He whispered a lie of omission into the consciousness of the cosmos. As Helios's chariot approached the horizon, ready to complete its journey, the internal divine impulse to end the day simply wasn't there. The celestial imperative, the knowledge of his role's conclusion, was erased for a single, critical moment. He continued his journey, but the final step was missing from the path. He simply hung there. On Earth, the effect was profoundly unsettling. The afternoon, which should have been mellowing into the warm hues of sunset, just stayed. The sun, which should have been a great sinking orb of red, remained a pale white-yellow disk, fixed a few degrees above the horizon. The shadows of trees and mountains, which should have been stretching into long, spidery fingers, remained stubbornly short and blunt. It was not a violent event. It was a terrifying stillness, a pause in the symphony of the world. Birds that had been singing their evening songs fell silent, confused. Nocturnal animals waiting in their burrows for the trigger of twilight did not emerge. Mortals looked up, their hearts filling with a primal dread that was worse than the fear of an eclipse. An eclipse was an attack, an event. This was a failure, a broken promise. The day had forgotten how to die. For hours, this unnatural twilight persisted. The light was thin, weary, and wrong. It was the light of a day that had overstayed its welcome, a guest that refused to leave. In the heavens, Selene waited. She felt no call, no signal to begin her ascent. The sky was still occupied. Her part of the dance could not begin because his had not ended. This was the genius of Apateon's deception. It wasn't chaos. It was paralysis. Consider the bizarre mythological artifact known as the celestial sextant. Unlike a normal sextant, used for navigation, this device was said to measure not the position of celestial bodies, but their adherence to their divine path. It was a web of spun moonlight and bronze, and at its center, a single, perfectly balanced needle of petrified dawn light floated. Legend says that as long as the cosmic dance was in order, the needle remained still. But on the day the sun forgot to set, the needle began to vibrate, emitting a low, discordant hummed, a sound of a fundamental law being stretched to its breaking point. Eventually, the sheer inertia of cosmic order reasserted itself. The stolen moment passed. Helios, confused and weary, finally dipped below the horizon. The delayed night fell with a sudden, unnatural abruptness, and a pale, disoriented Selene finally began her journey across a sky where the stars were already in the wrong place. The immediate crisis was over, but the damage was done. The most reliable thing in the universe had been proven to be unreliable. The celestial dance, once a symbol of perfect, unchanging order, was now known to be fallible. Apateon had not created a lie. He had injected a moment of doubt into the heart of truth itself, and that doubt would linger, a subtle poison for eternity. What, then, is is more powerful, a god who can fight the sun and cause a spectacle, or a god who can make the sun forget its own purpose, proving that even the most sacred laws of the universe are merely habits that can be broken. You have just felt the profound, unsettling silence of a universe whose most fundamental law has been broken. The sun itself was made to hesitate, a pause button pressed on the cosmos. That was Apateon's power vast, impersonal, and existentially terrifying. Now, you must pull your consciousness back from that cosmic scale and crash down into the heart of a far more intimate, far more visceral betrayal. You leave the cold, silent void and enter the warm, firelit halls of Asgard, for we must now recount the single most famous, most direct, and most devastating act of malice ever committed by Loki. This was not a subtle design. It was a murder. It was a tangible crime with a clear victim, a clear motive, and consequences that would stain the golden halls of the gods with blood and grief forever. You are standing in a field of green just outside the walls of Asgard. The air is filled with laughter, a sound that is both joyous and slightly manic. The gods are at play. They've discovered a new and wondrous game, throwing things at Baldur the Beautiful. Axes, boulders, spears, they hurl them with all their might, and each object upon approaching the shining god veers away or bounces off harmlessly. Baldur, the very picture of divine grace and purity, stands laughing, his body glowing with an inner light. His mother, Frigg, has extracted an oath from every single thing in the 9 realms, from fire and water, iron and all other metals, stones, earths, trees, diseases, poisons, and every beast and bird that they would never harm her son. The universe has promised him safety, and the gods celebrate this fact with a boisterous, almost violent show of affection. But you feel a presence nearby, watching from the shadows of a great oak. It is Loki, and he is not laughing.
Ice.
To him, this display of invulnerability is not a miracle. It is a challenge. The perfection of Baldur, his universal belovedness, is a constant, irritating noise in the symphony of Loki's own chaotic soul. He sees not a god to be celebrated, but a flaw in the system to be exploited. And so, the trickster goes to work. He assumes the form of an old woman, frail and unassuming, and approaches Fenrir, the Hall of Frigg. He praises her for her cleverness, for securing the safety of her son. He asks, with the feigned innocence of a crone, if she is truly certain that everything swore the oath. Frigg, proud and unsuspecting, confides in the old woman. Yes, she says everything. Well, except for a little shrub that grows west of Valhalla. It is called mistletoe. It seems so young and harmless, I did not think it was worth asking for an oath. The words hang in the air. This is Loki's moment. He has found the loophole. This isn't a grand cosmic law he's breaking. It's a simple contractual oversight. He leaves the goddess, his mind already crafting the weapon. He finds the mistletoe, a plant considered sacred in many human cultures, a symbol of peace and fertility under which truces were declared. The perversity of using this symbol of life for an act of death is a signature flourish of Loki's cruelty. He cuts it, not with a sacred golden sickle as the druids would, but with a hunter's knife, and with his own dark magic, he hardens the soft wood into a sharp, deadly dart, returns to the field of play. The gods are still laughing, still hurling weapons. Off to one side, excluded from the merriment, sits Hadar, Baldur's brother, who is blind, can hear the joy, but cannot participate. Loki approaches him, his voice a venomous whisper of false sympathy. "Why do you not honor your brother?" he asks. "Is it because you have no weapon, or because you cannot see where to aim?" Hadar expresses his sorrow at being left out. "I will be your eyes," Loki says, and he presses the mistletoe dart into the blind god's hand. He places his own hand over Hadra's, guiding his aim directly at the glowing heart of Baldur. "Throw," Loki commands. Hadra, wanting only to be part of the celebration, throws the dart. It flies true. It does not swerve, it does not bounce. It pierces Baldur's chest. The light in his eyes flickers and dies. He falls to the ground, silent. The laughter of the gods chokes in their throats. A wave of absolute, uncomprehending horror washes over the field. This is a tangible death. A body lies on the grass. The blood of a god stains the earth. There's no doubt, no slow-creeping erosion of trust. There is only the brutal, undeniable fact of a murder. Consequence is immediate. A journey to the land of the dead, a funeral pyre so massive it shakes the world, and a grief so profound that it darkens the sun more effectively than a Apateon's stolen day ever could. Loki's punishment for this crime is as physical and direct as the act itself. He is hunted, captured, and taken to a dark cave. And here we see a truly bizarre and gruesome detail of Norse justice. The gods turn one of Loki's own sons, Vali, into a wolf, who then tears his brother Narfi apart. They then take Narfi's entrails and use them to bind Loki to 3 great stones. The entrails themselves transform into chains of iron. A snake is placed above him, dripping burning venom onto his face for all eternity, a physical torment for a physical crime. His writhing is the cause of earthquakes. This is not a subtle erasure. This is pain, blood, and iron. You see the profound difference? Loki's betrayal was an attack on a person. Apateon's stolen day was an attack on a principle. Loki's lie resulted in a funeral. Apateon's resulted in a quiet, creeping sense that the universe could no longer be trusted. Loki's crime had a body. Apateon's had no evidence that it even occurred. But as you stand in the echoing silence left by Baldur's death, a critical question arises, one that cuts to the heart of what true power means. Which act was ultimately the greater betrayal of the gods, the murder that shattered their family, or the lie that proved their reality was just a story that could be edited at any time? The death of Baldur was a sharp, piercing sound, a cry of anguish that echoed across the 9 realms. It was a tangible event, a brutal act that left a body on the ground and a clear villain to hunt. The grief was hot, the anger righteous, the consequences bloody and direct. But the aftermath of Apateon's stolen day was the opposite. It was not a sound, but a deepening silence. It was not a hot-blooded murder, but the slow onset of a creeping, internal chill. Baldur's death was a wound the gods could see and mourn. The sun's hesitation was a poison that had seeped into the cosmic bloodstream, with no visible point of entry and no known antidote. Its first and most devastating symptom was the quiet, terrifying erosion of trust. You are no longer in the halls of Asgard, but in a place far older, a grove on a forgotten peak of Mount Olympus, where the air itself hums with the energy of growing things. This is a sanctuary for the nature deities, the gods whose very essence is tied to the rhythm of the world. Here sits Demeter, goddess of the harvest, her hands resting in her lap. But you see her brow furrow. She feels a phantom frost on a summer wind, a memory of barrenness when her fields should be at their most bountiful. By the stream, a naiad stares into the water, her reflection seeming to flicker with an uncertainty that was never there before. The rhythm is broken. The unwavering, predictable pulse of the world has developed a stutter, and these are the gods who feel it most acutely. The stolen day was not an attack on them, but it was an assault on their faith, not faith in a higher power, but faith in the very machinery of existence. Poseidon, in his deep ocean trenches, feels the great currents grow sluggish and unpredictable. The tides, once as reliable as his own heartbeat, now seem sullen and hesitant. They still rise and fall, but the perfect ancient timing is gone, replaced by a subtle arrhythmia. It's a feeling he cannot articulate, a wrongness he cannot pinpoint. But it makes him grip his trident with a tension born of newfound doubt. Did he command the tide to be late, or did it simply not listen? Or, a more terrifying thought, did the command never leave his own mind? This is Apateon's masterwork. He has not made the gods enemies of one another. He has made each god an enemy of their own certainty. He has introduced the philosophical wedge of doubt that the philosopher Descartes would one day wrestle with. The idea that your own senses can be deceived. The god of the hunt, Artemis, finds that the migratory patterns of the wild beasts have shifted by a fraction. It's not enough to cause starvation, but it's enough to be wrong. The paths her sacred deer follow are no longer the ones written in her divine knowledge. She begins to doubt her own instincts, the very core of her being. And so, the trust begins to decay, not in loud accusations, but in quiet, sideways glances. The nature deities, once a harmonious choir of seasonal cycles, now look at the celestial gods with a new unspoken suspicion. Demeter no longer sees Helios, the sun god, as a steadfast partner in her work of creation. She sees a colleague who missed a critical deadline for reasons he cannot explain. Helios, for his part, is consumed by a silent, burning shame. He feels a guilt for a failure that was not his fault, a confusion that eats at him from within. He becomes withdrawn, his light seeming a little less confident, a little less absolute. He begins to avoid the other gods, ashamed of the day he simply lost. The erosion spreads. The gods stop gathering in the old, easy ways. Conversations become clipped, formal. The bonds of the pantheon, forged in the fires of the Titanomachy and built on a foundation of shared purpose, begin to rust.
Ow.
They are united by their power, but they are becoming isolated by their individual, incommunicable doubts. Apateon's lie has created a pandemic of existential loneliness. There is a strange local legend among the mountain spirits of Crete about a bizarre and ancient artifact, the orrery of oaths. It was not a model of the planets, but a complex sphere of interwoven rings of crystal and gold, each ring representing a divine promise or a fundamental law of nature. For eons, it spun in perfect silent harmony. But after the stolen day, one of the crystal rings, the one representing the unbreakable pact between day and night, developed a microscopic hairline fracture. From this crack, it began to emit a single high-frequency note just beyond the edge of divine hearing. The note did not cause pain. It caused something worse. A subtle, persistent feeling of being watched. A low-grade paranoia that frayed the nerves of any god who stood too close. The orrery, once a symbol of cosmic certainty, had become a monument to its failure. The poison of distrust seeps downward. Mortals, who rely on the gods for the predictability of the seasons and the rising of the sun, begin to feel the uncertainty. Their prayers become more frantic, their sacrifices more desperate. They are trying to appease gods who are no longer sure of their own power. Apateon has not only made the gods doubt themselves, he has made them untrustworthy to their own creation. Loki's murder of Baldur created a rift between the gods. Apateon's quiet edit of reality has created a chasm between the gods and the universe itself. You stand in this quiet, paranoid pantheon, feeling the chill of their dissolving certainty. They have faced titans, monsters, and the betrayals of their own kin. But how do you fight an enemy you cannot see, a crime you cannot prove, and a lie that has become the new truth? The question that forms in this atmosphere of quiet despair is no longer about who to fight, but about what is real. What happens to the mind of a god when the very concept of objective reality begins to crumble around them? You are no longer an observer. You are now inside. The comfortable distance you've maintained is gone, and you find yourself inhabiting the consciousness of a deity. Not one of the great Olympians or a seer, but a lesser god perhaps, a god of a specific mountain pass, or the keeper of a forgotten river. Your identity is simple, your purpose clear. You are the rock, you are the water. It is a truth you have known for millennia. But now you are not so sure. The water feels strange against the banks of your own mind. The rock feels brittle, like it might crumble. This is the next stage of Apateon's design. He has moved on from tampering with the external world, the stars, the sun, the trust between gods. He has begun his most insidious work, tampering with the self. Loki's lies were always a confrontation. He would stand before you and call you a coward. He would steal your hammer, would murder your son. His deceptions were an external force you had to react to. You could get angry. You could seek revenge. You could fight back. Your sense of self, your I, remained intact. A fortress under siege. You knew who you were, and you knew he was the liar. But Apateon, his lies are not a siege. They are a disease that starts from within. He doesn't tell you that you are a coward. He subtly rewrites your memory so that you remember a moment of profound cowardice from your own past. A moment that never actually happened. The shame you feel is real. The memory feels real. The voice condemning you is your own. There is no one to fight. There is no external enemy. The fortress of yourself is not being attacked from the outside. Its very foundations are dissolving from within. This is the core of his power, a divine metaphysical form of what mortal psychologists would one day call gaslighting. But it is so much more profound. It is not just making you doubt your perceptions. It is making you doubt the very perceiver. The gods, whose identities are monolithic, built on eons of unchanging purpose, are uniquely vulnerable. Their strength is their certainty. When that certainty cracks, the entire edifice of their being is threatened. Imagine Hephaestus, the divine smith. His identity is built on his peerless skill. Loki might try to trick him to swap his materials or steal a finished product. Apateon wouldn't bother. He would simply plant a seed of doubt, a single vivid memory of a flaw in his greatest creation, a crack in the Aegis shield that only he can see. He would wake in a cold sweat, the memory of that imperfection so real that he would spend centuries searching for a flaw that doesn't exist. His confidence eroding with every failed inspection. He would doubt his own hands, the very source of his divinity. There is a terrifying and bizarre affliction known in the mortal world as Cotard's delusion. It is a rare psychiatric condition where a person holds the delusional belief that they are already dead, do not exist, or have lost their internal organs. It is a state of absolute nihilistic despair. Apateon did not need a physical disease to inflict this state upon a god. He could induce it with a whisper. He could find a god and simply erase the memory of their own worship. The temples would still stand, the prayers would still be offered, but the god themselves would have no recollection of ever being revered. They would see the statues in their honor and feel nothing. They would hear the pleas of their followers and feel like an imposter. They would be a living ghost, haunting their own divinity, convinced that they were a hollow echo, a name with no being attached. They would, in effect, suffer from a divine Cotards, believing themselves to be forgotten while still being worshipped. This psychological decay is described in one of the most forbidden and fragmented myths. A text that was supposedly burned in every divine library. It speaks of a bizarre conceptual parasite, the anamnesis weevil. This was not a physical creature. It was a mote of pure doubt, a tiny spectral insect made of anti-memory. Apateon could release these weevils into the sea of collective consciousness. A weevil would latch onto a god's mind stream, not to consume it, but to consume a single specific memory. It would not eat the memory of a great victory. It would eat the memory of why the victory was important. It would leave the facts intact, but devour the emotional context, the purpose. A god would remember slaying a great beast, but would be left with a hollow, nagging question. Why did I do that? What was the point? The weevil would leave behind a perfectly shaped hole, and the god's mind, desperate to fill the void, would begin to spin fantasies, paranoias, and self-recriminations to explain the gap. You feel this happening now, inside the divine mind you inhabit. You remember the river you command, but do you? Is it always your river? The name on the lips of the mortals who live by its banks sounds foreign. You remember the granite of your mountain pass, but you also have a flickering, half-formed memory of being a god of the desert sands, which is real. The two memories battle in your mind, and you feel your very essence begin to tear apart. You are paralyzed. To command the river would be to deny the desert. To embrace the desert would be to betray the mountain. You do nothing. You simply are. A being of contradictions, a god at war with himself. Your purpose, once your anchor, is now the very thing drowning you. Loki's lies created problems to be solved. Apateon's lies create paradoxes to be endured. One is a challenge to your power. The other is a challenge to your sanity. One makes you a victim. The other makes you a mystery to yourself. As you feel the foundations of this divine mind crumble, not with a bang, but with the quiet, inexorable creep of self-doubt, a final, horrifying question surfaces from the depths of your dissolving identity. When a god no longer knows who they are, does the part of the world they command simply cease to be, or does it wait patiently for a new, more certain mind to claim it? You are in the deepest dark. It's a place where the roots of the world tree drink from sunless wells, and the air is thick with the cold smell of wet stone and ancient endings. This is the cavern of Loki's punishment. Let the grandeur of Olympus and Asgard fade from your mind. There are no golden halls here, no celestial choirs. There is only the rhythmic, maddening drip, drip, drip of venom falling in the dark. You are a witness to divine justice in its most brutal physical form. You see Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the silver-tongued catalyst of chaos, finally and horribly still. He is stretched across 3 sharp-edged boulders, bound tight by chains you can't look at for too long. For they are the entrails of his own son, hardened by divine will into unyielding iron. The chains are not just a restraint, they are a statement, a constant gruesome reminder of a betrayal so profound it turned family into the very fabric of imprisonment. Above him, tethered to the weeping stalactites, hangs a great serpent, its scales the color of a starless night. From its fangs, a single drop of poison gathers, swells, and falls. But it does not strike Loki, not yet. You see a figure huddled by his side, a beacon of impossible loyalty in this hopeless place. It is his wife, Sigyn. Her face is pale in the gloom, her entire being focused on a single desperate task, holding a small wooden bowl to catch the venom before it touches her husband's face. The silence between each drip is an eternity. In that silence, you feel the sheer, tangible reality of this punishment. It is a known quantity. The crime was the murder of Baldur. The culprit is Loki. The sentence is this cave, these chains, this venom. It is cause and effect. It is knowable. It is, in its own horrific way, an act of order. But now, Sigyn's bowl is full. The clear, viscous poison trembles at the brim. With a soft cry of despair, she must turn away to empty it. For a few heartbeats, Loki is unprotected. The next drop falls. It strikes his forehead, and the effect is instantaneous. A scream is torn from his throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony that has no echo, for the rock itself seems to swallow it. His body convulses with such violence that the very foundations of the earth shake with him. This, the myths say, is the origin of earthquakes, the sympathetic tremor of a world feeling the agony of a tortured god. Then Sigyn is back, the bowl once again in place, and the terrible quiet resumes. You are witnessing a spectacle of pain, a punishment designed to be seen, to be understood, to be absolute. And that is precisely why it is a distraction. While Loki is bound, visible, his suffering a measurable quantity, the true threat continues its work, completely unseen. Rise from the cave, leaving the echoes of pain behind, and ascend back to the gleaming halls of the gods. And you find that nothing has changed. The chill is still in the air. The quiet paranoia still festers. The gods thought that by capturing and punishing the great liar, they had solved the problem. They had found the source of the rot and cut it out. They had their scapegoat. But the symptoms persist. The stolen day is not undone. The cracks in memory have not healed. The erosion of trust has not been halted. This is Apateon's true genius. Loki's crimes were so loud, so theatrical, so undeniably him that he became a perfect shield for a far greater silent infiltration. The gods pour all their focus, their anger, and their resources into the visible problem, the tangible traitor writhing in a cave. This brutal public punishment gives them a sense of control, a belief that they are restoring order. But they are merely treating a single, festering wound, while the systemic cancer of Apateon's influence metastasizes throughout the entire cosmic body. They are locking the front door, while the very foundations of the house are turning to dust. In a strange parallel, many ancient human cultures practiced a form of ritual scapegoating. In ancient Greece, during the Thergelia festival, to men the pharmakoi would be chosen to bear the community's collective guilt and impurities. They would be driven out of the city, sometimes even put to death, in the belief that they were carrying the city's evils away with them. It was a way of dealing with a crisis by assigning it a physical form and then expelling it. Loki has become the pharmakos for the entire pantheon. They have loaded him with the guilt for the growing wrongness of the world and cast him into the dark. But the sickness remains because they misdiagnosed the disease. There is a legend of a bizarre artifact kept by Forseti, the Norse god of justice, called the Heartstone of Verity. It was a perfectly smooth white stone that rested on a pedestal of black obsidian. When all was right and just in the 9 realms, the stone was cool and motionless. When a crime was committed, the stone would grow warm and tremble, pulling itself in the direction of the culprit. After Baldur's death, the stone blazed with heat and pulled so violently towards Loki that it nearly shattered its pedestal. But now, with Loki bound, the stone should be cold and still. It is not. It remains tepid, and it shivers with a constant low-grade, directionless tremor. Forseti stares at it for hours, his mind reeling. The clear guilt of Loki is gone, replaced by a faint ambient guilt that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The instrument of justice itself is telling him the case is not closed, but it can give him no new leads. The gods, in their relief, try to ignore it. They celebrate Loki's capture. They hold feasts. They try to return to the old ways, but they cannot. The universe feels off. And without Loki to blame for the ongoing weirdness who is there, they begin to look at each other again, but this time with a deeper, colder suspicion. Maybe Loki wasn't working alone. Maybe the traitor is still among them. Apateon has not only used Loki as a shield, he has used Loki's punishment to sow the next generation of his most potent crop, paranoia. The hunt for the visible enemy has blinded them to the fact that the enemy is no longer a person. It is the very air they breathe, the thoughts they think, the memories they trust. Which then is the more effective prison? The one the gods built for Loki, with its physical chains and tangible torment? Or the one Apateon is slowly building for all the other gods, a prison of the mind, where there are no walls, no chains, and no serpent, only the quiet, unending, internal whisper that you can no longer trust yourself? The punishment of Loki is one of the most searing images etched into the tapestry of Norse mythology. It is a spectacle of justice, brutal and absolute. Now, you must hold two scenes in your mind at once. You must become a being of dual consciousness, capable of seeing the light and the dark simultaneously. In one eye, you see the cavern. In the other, you see the cosmos. This is the great divergence, the moment where the god's attention is fatally misdirected, and the true, unseen power flourishes in the shadow of a public torment. In your left eye, the scene is visceral. You are back in the lightless depths. You feel the eternal damp, the grave chill that seeps into your bones. You see Loki bound. His struggle is over. He lies quiescent, his body a map of agony upon the three sharp stones. The chains made from his son's essence have now fused with the rock, a grotesque marriage of flesh and geology. The serpent above is a fixture as unmoving as a gargoyle, its only motion the slow, patient welling of venom at its fangs. You see Sigyn, her devotion a terrible, beautiful thing. She is a statue of grief, her entire existence reduced to the arc of a bowl. Catching the poison, turning, pouring, returning. The system of torture is perfect, self-sustaining. The screams that cause the world to tremble are a known variable, a predictable outcome. Loki is a problem that has been solved. He is accounted for. He is bound. Now turn your attention to your right eye. Look away from the cave and see the sprawling, glittering expanse of the divine realms. See the gods in their halls. There is a sense of relief, a collective exhalation that has been held since Baldur's fall. They have done it.
Agree.
They have hunted the perpetrator, judged him, and delivered a punishment so severe it will be a warning for all eternity. They have restored order. Feasts are held. Songs are sung, praising the might of Thor who led the hunt, the wisdom of Odin who sanctioned the punishment. They have faced the great lie and have chained it in the dark. They are safe, but they are not. Because while every eye in the cosmos is turned towards the dramatic, satisfying, invisible suffering of Loki, Apateon is finally free to work on his grandest scale. Loki had been a chaotic force, but a loud one. His very presence drew attention. His pranks, his insults, his betrayals, they were all events that forced the gods to react, keeping them sharp, keeping them focused on the present reality. But now, with the great distraction chained and screaming beneath the earth, a profound quiet has fallen over the divine consciousness. And in this quiet, Apateon's whispers become the only sound. He is utterly unseen, is no body to bind, no voice to trace. His influence, which before was a series of subtle tests, now becomes a full-scale renovation of reality. While the gods are patting themselves on the back for punishing a murderer, Apateon is quietly dismantling the laws of physics that would have made the murder possible in the first place. While they recount the story of Loki's capture, Apateon is editing the memories of other older stories, creating contradictions and gaps that will fester into paranoia later. He is a phantom, a ghost, in the machine of the cosmos. And the gods have just willingly fired the only watchman who was chaotic enough to notice him. There's a little-known historical account from the annals of ancient Rome describing a peculiar legal practice. When a high-profile criminal was executed, their property was publicly destroyed. Their name was struck from all records, and it became a crime to even speak their name. This was called damnatio memoria, the damnation of memory. The goal was to erase the person from history so completely that it would be as if they never existed. The Romans believed this was the ultimate punishment. Apateon would have found this concept laughably primitive. He didn't need to destroy records or forbid speech. He could erase the memory itself, not just from books, but from the minds that read them. And with Loki drawing all the divine ire, Apateon's campaign of silent, cosmic damnatio, memoria, against truth itself could proceed without interruption. Imagine a bizarre celestial artifact, the loom of consequences. It is a vast, three-dimensional web of shimmering threads, located in the hall of a justice god. Each significant action in the cosmos creates a new thread, connecting cause to effect. After Baldur's death, a thick, blood-red thread stretched directly from Loki to the fallen god. After his binding, a chain of iron-colored threads wrapped around Loki's node in the web, pinning it down. The gods looked at this and were satisfied. But they failed to notice the thousands of other threads, thin as spider silk and nearly invisible, that were slowly, silently fraying all over the loom. They didn't notice the new threads that were appearing from nowhere, with no discernible cause, or the old threads that were simply fading away. They were so focused on the one thick red cable of Loki's guilt that they failed to see that the entire network was failing. Loki bound is a finite problem. He is a prisoner. His threat is paused, deferred until the final battle of Ragnarok. He is a future concern. Apateon unseen is an infinite problem. He is not a prisoner. He is the prison itself, slowly constructing its invisible walls around the minds of the gods. They are trapped and do not even know it. They are looking at a locked cage, proud of their work, while the floor of their entire universe dissolves beneath their feet. Loki's punishment was the single greatest gift the gods could have ever given to his rival. It gave him what he needed most: their undivided inattention. The contrast is absolute. Loki is loud, Apateon is silent. Loki is presence, Apateon is absence. Loki is chained by physical matter. Apateon is the one who redefines what matter is. The gods chose to fight the enemy they could see, the one who looked like them, felt like them, and bled like them. They never considered that the real threat was the one who was nothing like them at all. And so the question that echoes from the depths of Loki's prison to the silent, paranoid halls of the gods is this: what is more dangerous, a lie that has been caught and chained, or a lie that has become so powerful it is now the one holding the keys? You have felt the chilling injustice of Apateon's power on a mortal scale. It's a profound violation, a twisting of the human narrative. But now you must ascend, leaving the world of mortals behind. You must travel to a place beyond time, a realm that exists outside the conventional flow of cause and effect, for we are about to witness the ultimate sacrilege. Apateon's influence has grown so vast, so pervasive, that it has finally reached the sanctum of the most powerful and feared beings in the cosmos, the very architects of destiny itself. You are in a chamber that is not a chamber. It has no walls, only the shimmering, infinite tapestry of interwoven lives stretching into forever. The light here is not from any star. It is the collective glow of every soul's potential. The only sound is a low vibrational hum, the sound of reality being continuously created. Before you, at a loom so vast it defies perspective, sit the three sisters. In Greece, they are the Moirai. In the Norse lands, they are the Norns. They are the Fates, and their power is absolute. Not even Zeus, not even Odin, can defy their decree. Clotho spins the thread of life. Lachesis measures its length. And Atropos, the inevitable, waits with her shears to make the final cut. Their work is the bedrock of all existence. It is not prophecy. It is the script. But something is wrong. You see it first in the hands of Clotho, the spinner. Lumpy, it is thick in some places, dangerously thin in others. It feels wrong, like wool spun with strands of glass. Worse, she will be spinning the fate of a simple farmer, and suddenly a thread of pure gold, the kind reserved for kings, will appear from nowhere and weave itself into the simple linen. It has no source. It does not come from her distaff. It simply is. She stops, her ancient, impassive face, for the first time showing a flicker of bewilderment. Then you look to Lachesis, the measurer. She stretches it out, allotting his lifespan, his portion of fate. But the thread writhes in her hands. It refuses to be measured. It loops back on itself, creating knots of temporal paradox. A section that should represent his youth is suddenly brittle and gray with age. A section near the end where he should be old and frail glows with the impossible vitality of a newborn. Legacies lets the thread fall, her expression one of utter disbelief. She has measured every life since the beginning of time. She has never encountered a life that refused to be quantified. Finally, your gaze falls upon Atropos. She who cannot be turned. Her adamantine shears are poised over the thread of an ancient king. The moment of his death, decreed eons ago, has arrived. She moves to cut, but the thread resists. Her shears, which have severed the lives of titans and gods, which have ended dynasties and civilizations, cannot snip this one, stubborn strand. It has been reinforced by an unknown will. She applies more pressure, and with a sound like tearing reality, the thread finally snaps. But then, the impossible happens. The two severed ends of the thread, instead of falling away lifelessly, begin to glow. They stretch towards each other like lovers, and with a flash of silent violet light they refuse. The king, who should be dead, lives on. Atropos stares at her shears, then at the healed thread, and a cold dread, an emotion she has never known, begins to form in the void of her being. This is the ultimate violation. Apateon has hacked the source code. His constant, subtle edits the stolen day. The fabricated war, the altered memories have finally accumulated to a critical mass. They have become so numerous, so deeply embedded in the fabric of what is, that they are now creating feedback loops in the system of what is to be. The fates are not merely seeing errors in their work, they are losing the ability to work at all. There is a deep philosophical myth recorded by Plato, the myth of which describes the very structure of the cosmos. It is a great cosmic axle, and on it turn the whirls that represent the paths of the planets and stars. The three fates sit enthroned beside this spindle, helping to turn the whirls, ensuring the great machine of necessity runs true. In a lost verse of this myth, it is said that one day, the spindle of an ankh, for the first time in its eternal existence, began to wobble, a shudder that ran up the axle and through the very hands of the fates. It was a sign that necessity itself was losing its integrity. The absolute laws of the universe were becoming suggestions. The fates now realize what they are facing. This is not the random chaos of a primordial beast or the defiant rage of a rebellious god. This is a quiet, intelligent, and systematic dismantling of their power. They are the ultimate authors, and they have become aware of an editor who is not just correcting their work, but is rewriting entire chapters, deleting main characters, and inserting new ones, all without their consent or knowledge. They feel their own divine will being overwritten by another. Stronger will, a will that does not roar or command, but simply edits reality into a new state of being. They look at the fraying, glitching, impossible tapestry before them, and they feel a terror far greater than any physical threat. It is the terror of obsolescence. What is a weaver whose threads weave themselves? What is a measurer whose lines change their own length? What is a cutter whose cuts refuse to hold? They have been the one constant in a universe of change. But the question that now hangs in the silent, humming air of their sanctum is the most terrifying one ever conceived. If fate itself is no longer fixed, if the story of the universe can be rewritten at any moment, then what is the point of a story at all? You have seen Apateon's power corrupt the very fabric of reality. From the silent paths of starlight to the infallible loom of the fates, you have seen him poison the well of trust and sanity within the divine mind. Now you must witness his most personal, most cruelly intimate form of theft. This is a lie that does not target the cosmos, but the very soul of a single mortal man. It is the theft of something more precious than life, more valuable than gold. It is the theft of a hero's glory. You are standing in the dusty sunlight of a forgotten corner of a great city, perhaps Thebes or Mycenae. A grand festival is underway. Bards are singing, wine is flowing, and crowds are cheering as they parade past a newly unveiled statue. It is a masterpiece of marble and bronze depicting a proud king, his spear thrust downwards into the throat of a fantastical beast. The king is Alasta, and the bards sing of his single-handed bravery, of how he saved the city from the monstrous Gorgon hound that plagued the western hills. His name is on every child's lips. His deed will be recorded in the annals of the city, a cornerstone of its history. But you turn your gaze away from the statue, past the cheering crowds, and you look towards a small, quiet alleyway. There, a man sits alone, mending a fishing net. His face is weathered, his hands are calloused, and one of his legs is scarred with a deep, jagged wound that never quite healed right. His name is Hylas, and no one here remembers him. But you do, because you were there. You remember. You remember the Gorgon Hound, a beast of nightmare, with the hide of a rhino, the fangs of a viper, and a gaze that did not turn you to stone, but filled you with a paralyzing, soul-crushing despair. You remember the city's warriors, their courage failing, their lines breaking as the hound's aura of dread washed over them. You remember King Alasta, safe behind the city's highest walls, his face pale with terror, already drafting the terms of surrender. And you remember Hylas, a simple fisherman, armed with nothing but a sharpened harpoon and a desperate, unwavering love for his home. You remember him not facing the beast with bravado, but with a quiet, calculated intelligence. He did not fight its strength, he fought its nature. He used mirrors of polished bronze to confuse its gaze. He used the scent of a rare herb to dull its senses, and he lured it into a narrow ravine where its bulk became a disadvantage. You remember the final, desperate struggle? The harpoon thrust into the creature's unprotected underbelly, the shriek that was half beast, half despair. You remember Hylas bleeding from the gash on his leg, being carried back to the city not on a king's litter, but on the shoulders of his fellow fishermen, their cheers the only song he would ever hear. So what happened? How did the story change so completely? This was not Loki's work. Loki might have tried to take credit himself, disguised as the king. He would have made a show of it. Apateon's method was far more insidious. He did not need to act, he just needed to edit. As the first breathless storytellers ran to the city square, Apateon was there, a whisper on the wind. The name Hylas on their tongues was subtly replaced with the king. It was a simple, imperceptible change, but it was enough. The bards, eager to please their patron, heard the name they wanted to hear. The priests, eager to see divine providence in royal courage, recorded the story that best fit their narrative. The lie took root, not because it was forced, but because it was convenient. Then the second stage began. The people who were actually there, the fishermen who carried Hylas, began to doubt their own memories. It was so chaotic, one might say to another. Are you sure it was Hylas? The man who struck the blow was covered in so much dust and blood, he could have been anyone. And the king is a brave man, isn't he? Apateon's influence nurtured this doubt, letting the power of suggestion and social pressure do his work for him. Soon, to claim Hylas was the hero was to contradict the official story, to contradict the bards, the priests, the king himself. It became easier, safer, to simply agree. Yes, of course. It was the king, a glorious day. This type of story, that of the false hero who steps in to claim the credit, is a common theme in mortal folklore. Usually the false hero is an active villain who tricks or murders the true hero. But Apateon's version is more terrifying. King Alasta did nothing. He is a passive beneficiary of a cosmic clerical error. He may even believe the lie himself. His own memory of cowardice slowly overwritten by the sheer, overwhelming power of a world that insists he is a hero. There is a bizarre, forgotten artifact described in the marginalia of a single burned scroll, the Anell of Souls. It was said to be a book with pages made of pressed light, and on these pages the deeds of mortals were recorded not in ink, but in a living flame. A great deed would burn as a bright fire. When Hylas slew the Gorgon Hound, a new fire erupted in the book, a brilliant white-hot flame bearing his name. But Apateon did not extinguish the flame. Instead, he simply cupped his ethereal hands around it, and as gently as blowing a dandelion seed, he blew the fire from Hylas's page to the page of King Alasta. The deed, the glory, the very energy of the heroic act was transferred. On Hylas's page, only a cold, dark smudge of soot remained. The book did not record a lie. The book was changed to reflect a new truth. You look back at Hylas in the alley. He feels no anger, no bitterness, only a profound and hollow emptiness. He lives in a world that has been subtly altered to exclude him from his own life's greatest moment. He is a ghost in his own story, his sacrifice rendered meaningless because it is unremembered. Apateon has not killed him. He has done something far worse. He has untethered him from his own legacy, leaving him to drift in a sea of anonymity. This is a cruelty Loki, with all his venom and daggers, could never conceive. It is a murder of the soul, committed without a single drop of blood. You watch the parade, the cheering crowds, the proud statue of the Liar King, and you feel the weight of a truly chilling question settle upon you, a question that undermines every story ever told. If a hero's deed is done, but the memory of it is stolen, did the heroism ever truly exist? You have felt the fraying of fate's own tapestry, a sacrilege that proves no power is absolute, no destiny truly fixed. The work of the fates, once the universe's most sacred constant, has been corrupted by Apateon's silent, invisible edits. But a glitch in the cosmic code, however profound, is still an abstract horror. Now, you must witness the effect of this grand corruption on a single divine mind. You must see what happens when an unstoppable lie meets an immovable belief in truth. This is the story of the breaking of the one god who should have been Apateon's natural enemy, and who instead became his greatest masterpiece. In a quiet, crystalline spire, far from the boisterous halls of Olympus or Asgard, resides the god of knowledge. Let us call him Januvus, for his gaze, like his Roman counterpart Janus, looks both forward and backward, seeing the unerring line of history. But Januvus is not a god of wisdom, which is fluid and interpretive. He is the god of facts. His domain is a library not of books, but of perfect eternal truths. Here, every event that has ever occurred is recorded on tablets of solidified light. The trajectory of every atom, the precise wording of every oath, the exact number of grains of sand on every shawl are stored, catalogued, cross-referenced in a state of flawless, immutable order. Januvus is the Pantheon's living archive, the final arbiter of what is. His mind is a flawless engine of logic, his purpose to ensure the integrity of the cosmic record. He does not feel he verifies. It begins for him not as a lie, but as a clerical error. While reviewing the celestial logs, he encounters the anomaly of the stolen day. His records show the sun completing its arc in a standard duration for 10 millennia. But on one day, the duration is elongated by several hours. There is no corresponding event, no celestial battle, no divine intervention to explain the discrepancy. It is simply a corrupted data point. He flags it, assuming a minor flaw in the recording medium itself, and attempts to correct it, but he cannot. The fact of the longer day is as solid as the fact of the normal days. He now holds two contradictory verified truths. For the first time in his existence, his perfect archive contains a paradox. 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 + 1 = 3. Both are true. He turns to another record, the annals of mortal heroism. He reviews the glorious deeds of King Alasta, who slew the Gorgonhound. The records are perfect. Testimony is unanimous. The flame of the deed burns brightly on Alasta's page in the Annal of Souls. But when Januvus cross-references the event with the physiological records of the city's inhabitants, he finds something that makes his logical mind recoil. The memory of the event in Alasta's own mind is thin. It lacks the rich, sensory detail of a genuine lived experience. It feels like a story he was told, not a battle he fought. Conversely, he finds a rich, impossibly detailed memory of the battle in the mind of a fisherman named Hylas, a man whose own page in the Annal is dark with soot. Again, two perfect, verifiable, and mutually exclusive truths. This is the beginning of his descent. Januvus, the god of certainty, is now the curator of a library of contradictions. He becomes obsessed. He locks himself away in his crystalline spire, forgoing the company of other gods. He works frantically, his hands flying across the tablets of light, cross-referencing everything with everything else. He is searching for the source of the corruption, the single original error from which all others must have cascaded. He is trying to debug reality. But the deeper he goes, the more contradictions he finds. He sees the threads of fate fraying in the loom. He sees the memory of a great divine war that has all the emotional weight of a true event, but no physical evidence it ever occurred. In the center of his library rests a bizarre and unique artifact, the lyre of resonance. Its strings are not made of gut or metal, but of spun axiom. Each one is a fundamental, undeniable truth of the universe. When all is logical and coherent, the lyre emits a constant, perfect, harmonious hum. It is the music of reason itself. Now, As Genuvis toils, the lyre begins to change. It begins to emit a low, discordant twang, a single note that is painfully, horribly flat. As more contradictions pile up, another string begins to vibrate out of tune, and another. Soon, the lyre is producing a constant, maddening symphony of dissonance, a cacophony of logical failure. The sound grinds on Januvis's divine senses, a constant auditory reminder that the universe no longer makes sense. He grows gaunt, his light dimming. His movements become jerky, paranoid. The other gods, who once came to him for clarity, now avoid his spire, from which the unsettling, discordant music never ceases. In ancient Greece, they spoke of theomania, or divine madness. It was often seen as a gift. The madness of Dionysus brought ecstasy. The madness of the oracle at Delphi brought prophecy. But Januvis's madness is not a gift, it is a curse. It is the madness that comes from being the only sane person in an insane world. The madness of a mathematician who discovers a flaw in the very concept of numbers. He is not being gifted with visions. He is being tormented by the one awful truth his mind cannot accept. Reality is subjective. The breaking point comes when he finally abandons his own archives and turns his gaze inward to his own divine memory. He tries to recall his own origin. He remembers being born of the first moment of cosmic reason. But he also finds another memory, equally vivid, of being born from a burst of chaotic, irrational energy. Both are true. The paradox is not external anymore. It is inside him. He is the contradiction. He lets out a scream that is not a sound, but a wave of pure logical despair that cracks the crystal walls of his own library. His mind shatters. He does not die. He becomes something else. He becomes a babbling oracle of paradox. If you were to ask him a question, he would give you every possible answer, all delivered with the unshakable conviction of absolute truth. What is the color of the sky, you might ask? And he would reply in a single overlapping chorus of voices, "It is blue. It is not blue. It is a color that has never existed. It has no color, for the sky is an illusion." He has become the living embodiment of Apateon's victory. A god of knowledge driven mad by the truth that there is no singular truth left. You retreat from the shattered spire, the sound of the discordant lyre and the babbling of the broken god fading behind you. Apateon has not killed the god of truth. He has converted him. He has turned his greatest potential enemy into his most powerful testament. The silent, creeping horror of the situation settles upon you, coalescing into a final, dreadful question. What is more terrifying? A universe where truth has been erased, or a universe where the only being who can see the full, unadulterated picture is driven hopelessly, irrevocably insane by the sight? You have seen the gods retreat into paranoia, their faith in reality shaken. You have seen a god of pure knowledge shatter under the weight of cosmic contradiction. The system is failing, but the failures are subtle, easily dismissed as madness or isolated glitches. For the awful truth to finally surface, it cannot be found by a great god looking for a grand conspiracy. The first thread of the unraveling must be caught by a small, overlooked deity, one whose domain is so narrow, so precise, that they are uniquely positioned to notice a flaw that everyone else has missed. You must now travel to the quiet edges of the divine world, to a place of stillness and repetition. You are in the grotto of lingering sounds, a cavern carved not from rock, but from crystallized memory. The air here is cool and clean, and the only sound is the gentle, rhythmic dripping of liquid time from weeping stalactites. This is the domain of a minor goddess named Nemesina. Her name is rarely invoked by mortals, and she holds no seat on the great councils. Her task assigned to her at the dawn of time is simple but absolute. She is the keeper of echoes and the guardian of reflections. It is her sacred duty to ensure that every sound that bounces from a canyon wall is a faithful copy of the original, and that every image that appears in a still pool of water is a perfect, unwavering representation of what stands before it. Her existence is a testament to the universe's fidelity. For eons, her work has been a quiet joy of perfection. A bird sings, and the echo she curates and releases is a perfect replica. A deer bends to drink, and the reflection she holds steady in the water is flawless. But lately, her work has become a source of quiet, maddening frustration. The errors began subtly. An echo of a thunderclap returned with a faint secondary rumble that had not been in the original sound. She dismissed it as atmospheric distortion. Then, a reflection of a mountain peak in a perfectly still alpine lake showed a dusting of snow on a ridge that was, in reality, bare rock. She dismissed it as a trick of the light. But the errors continued, small, persistent, and random. An echo of a four-syllable name would return with 5. A reflection of a goddess wearing a golden circlet would show the circlet as silver. These were not grand failures. They were the cosmic equivalent of typos. But to Nemesina, whose entire being was defined by perfect replication, they were a profound sacrilege. She became obsessed. She abandoned all other divine pursuits and dedicated herself to finding the source of these flaws. She spent centuries in a single canyon, shouting a single word and listening with agonizing precision to the thousands of echoes that returned. Most were perfect, but one in every 1,000 would be wrong, containing a phantom sibilance, a ghostly vowel. She would stand for days by a single pond, staring at the reflection of a single flower, waiting for the moment when a petal would appear in the water that did not exist on the plant itself. The other gods, if they noticed her at all, thought she had succumbed to a peculiar form of divine madness, an obsessive fixation on the trivial. They did not understand that for Nemesina, this was not trivial. It was an attack on the very concept of her own divinity. During her lonely investigation, she remembered the fate of Jonavis, the god of knowledge. She recalled how his descent into madness began with the discovery of clerical errors in the cosmic record. By the time she had pitied him for his weak mind, now a cold suspicion began to form. What if Jonavis was not weak? What if he was the first to see what she was seeing now? In her grotto, Nemesina kept a bizarre and ancient artifact, a tool of her trade known as the diaphanous diopter. It was not a lens for light, but a polished disc of crystallized silence that magnified veracity. When held up to a sound or an image, it would reveal any falsehood. A lie spoken through it would create a visible, ugly shimmer in the air. A magically glamoured object viewed through it would have its illusion stripped away, showing its true form. It was her ultimate tool for quality control. In all her millennia of existence, she had only ever used it to confirm perfection. Now she decided to use it to diagnose an error. She waited by her still alpine lake. She stared at the reflection of the mountain, and then it happened. For a fleeting second, the reflection showed a snow-dusted peak, while the real peak remained bare rock. In that instant, she thrust the diopter before her eye and looked not at the mountain, but at its reflection in the water. She expected to see the diopter reveal the flaw, to show the reflection ripple and distort, exposing the lie of the phantom snow. It showed the opposite. Viewed through the diopter, the reflection in the water was perfect, clear, and stable. The instrument of truth was telling her that the reflection, the one with the snow, was the true image. Her blood ran cold. In a flash of horrifying insight, she whipped the diopter up to look at the actual mountain peak. And for a split second, before her mind corrected the perception, she saw it. Through the lens of absolute veracity, she saw the snow on the real mountain. The flaw was not in the reflection. The reflection was showing her the truth. The flaw was in her own perception of reality. The awful truth crashed down upon her with the force of a collapsing star. She, and all the other gods, were living in a false reality, a grand, seamless illusion painted over the true one. Apateon's lies were not glitches in the system. Its lies were the system, what she had been seeing. These tiny, maddening errors in her echoes and reflections were not flaws in the lie. They were cracks, were momentary, microscopic tears in the fabric of the grand illusion, allowing a flicker of the true original reality to shine through. The echo with the extra syllable wasn't wrong. It was a perfect copy of a word that had been spoken in the real universe, a universe that had been overwritten. The reflection with the silver circlet wasn't a mistake. It was a glimpse of a reality where the goddess was wearing silver before Apateon had edited it to gold. Nemesina stumbled back from the lake, her mind reeling. She, the goddess of fidelity, had been diligently and perfectly curating the echoes and reflections of a lie. She had been an unknowing servant of the very force that was anathema to her existence. She now possessed a truth more terrible than any curse, a secret that had driven the god of knowledge himself insane. To speak it would be to accuse the entire world of being a counterfeit. Who would believe her? She was a minor deity, a forgotten whisper. And what do you do when you are the only person who knows that the sky is just a painted ceiling, and you've just seen the first tiny crack begin to form? You have seen the truth, a truth so terrible it shattered a god of knowledge and was discovered only through the obsessive work of a forgotten goddess of echoes. Nemesina holds the secret. She knows the universe is a counterfeit, a grand illusion painted over a truer reality. She knows the glitches she sees are not flaws in a lie, but cracks, letting the original truth shine through. She stands by her still alpine lake, the diaphanous diopter, the lens of veracity, feeling heavier than a mountain in her hand, and she is paralyzed by a chilling realization. She is a lonely Cassandra in a cosmos that has already fallen. To speak this truth is to sound like the very madness that is consuming the pantheon. But to stay silent is to be an accomplice to the end of everything. She makes her choice. She seeks out Hermes, the messenger, the god whose domain is the space between worlds, whose feet are shod with speed, and whose mind is as quick as his sandals. If anyone can understand a message about a flaw in reality's fabric, it is he. She finds him in a sun-dappled glade, his caduceus humming softly beside him. Her words spill out, frantic and desperate. A torrent of impossible claims about false reflections, phantom echoes, and a reality that is a lie. She shows him the diopter, begging him to see for himself. And as Hermes listens, a cold dread unlike any he has ever known begins to seep into his immortal heart. He sees the terror in her eyes, a terror that is too pure, too absolute, to be simple madness. He feels the logic in her impossible claims. He remembers the stolen day. He remembers the odd, directionless tremor from Forseti's heartstone. He remembers the babbling of Januvus in his shattered spire. The pieces begin to click into place, forming a picture so monstrous his mind instinctively tries to reject it. But it is Nemesina's final whispered plea that breaks him. The reflections aren't lying, she says, her voice trembling. The world is. He does not take the diopter. He is afraid to. He, the god of travelers, of tricksters, of clever words, is for the first time in his existence afraid of a simple, honest look. He believes her. And in that moment of belief, the creeping paranoia that has infected the pantheon finds its ultimate target. Hermes, the god of messages, begins to doubt the very idea of a message. How can he deliver this truth when his own senses might be part of the lie? He carries the warning to Olympus, but it is a corrupted file. The message is garbled by his own fear. He speaks of a minor goddess's delusions, of cosmic anxieties, of ripples from Loki's punishment. He cannot bring himself to say the final, awful truth. It's all fake. The Olympians, eager for a return to normalcy, hear what they want to hear. A hysterical nature spirit, a few lingering aftershocks. They dismiss it. They have a real enemy chained in a cave. They have no time for phantoms. But the seed is planted, and now they begin to notice. Zeus, sitting on his throne, feels a subtle vibration that is not the rumble of his own thunder. He looks at his reflection in the polished marble floor, and for a split second, his face is not his own, but that of a stranger, old and weary. He blinks, and the image is gone. He tells himself it is a trick of the light, but the dismissal has no strength. Hera, walking through her gardens, hears the echo of her own footsteps on the gravel path, come back a fraction of a second too late. She stops, her heart pounding. It is the feeling of being out of sync with your own body, a dizzying, nauseating vertigo of the soul. The horror begins to dawn. And it is a new kind of horror. The gods have known fear before. They feared the brute strength of the Titans. They feared the chaotic might of Typhon. They feared the finality of Ragnarok. But those were all fears of an enemy. They were fears of something you could fight. You can raise an army against Titans. You can hurl lightning bolts at a monster. You can rally the righteous for a final, glorious battle. That kind of fear is hot, active, and in its own way, empowering. It leads to action. This is not that. This is the fear of unknowing. It is a cold fear, a creeping, paralytic dread that comes not from a threat but from the dissolution of the very ground on which you stand. It is the realization that the enemy is not at the gates. The enemy is the gates and the walls and the floor and the sky. The enemy is the memory of your own mother's face. The enemy is the feeling of love for your own child. How do you fight that? How do you draw a sword against a flawed reflection? How do you wage war on a memory that feels like your own but isn't? In Greek mythology, Phobos and Deimosphere and Dread were the twin sons of Ares, divine personifications of the panic and terror that precede a battle. They were forces to be unleashed upon an enemy. But now, in the silent, gilded halls of Olympus, they are no longer minions of the war god. They have become the air itself. The gods breathe in dread and exhale paranoia. There is a legend of a bizarre artifact within the treasury of Olympus. An object so dangerous it is kept under 100 locks, the Orb of Hegemony. It is a perfect sphere of polished obsidian that does not reflect light but absorbs it. It is said that if a god were to gaze into it, it would show them the unfiltered absolute truth of their own dominion. The true extent of their power, the true loyalty of their followers, the true nature of their own being. But no one has dared to look into it for millennia, for the orb does not flatter. And now it has become the most terrifying object in the cosmos. The gods avoid the treasury. They fear the orb not because it might lie, but because they are now utterly, existentially terrified that it might tell the truth. The Pantheon is trapped. They are facing an enemy they cannot name, a crime they cannot prove, and a reality they can no longer trust. The dawning horror is not of a war to come, but of the realization that they are already occupied territory, their very consciousness the battlefield, and they are losing a war they never even knew had begun. The question that now hangs in the silent, gilded air, thick with the smell of fear, is no longer how to win. It is this: when you can no longer trust the evidence of your own immortal eyes, what, in all the cosmos, is left to believe? You are in the great hall of Olympus, but the air, which should be vibrant with power and ambrosia, is thin and cold. It is thick with the metallic tang of fear. The gods are gathered, but they do not feast. They stand in tense, silent clusters, avoiding one another's eyes. You have just witnessed the dawning of their great horror, the slow, chilling realization that reality itself is a faulty construct. They are adrift in a sea of unknowing, and the terror of it is threatening to tear their immortal minds apart. An enemy you cannot see, a crime you cannot define, this is a state of being that a god, a being of action and will, cannot endure. They are desperate for an anchor, for a narrative, for something solid to push against in this ocean of doubt. And in that desperation, they turn to the oldest and most comforting of all divine solutions. They find someone to blame. The name is first spoken as a venomous whisper, perhaps from Ares, whose warrior mind recoils from a formless enemy and craves a physical target. This has the stench of Loki about it, he mutters, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. The whisper spreads. It is a contagion of relief. The idea is intoxicating Loki, of course. It is always Loki, the cosmic weirdness, the fraying of fate, the glitches in reality. It must be him. It has to be him. It is a long, elaborate, posthumous prank, a final act of chaos orchestrated from his prison deep beneath the earth. It is the only explanation that makes sense, the only narrative that allows them to convert their cold, paralytic dread into hot, righteous anger. You can feel the shift in the hall. The tension does not dissipate, but it changes. The free-floating anxiety begins to coalesce, to crystallize around a single, familiar point. The fear of the unknown is replaced by the hatred of the known. It is a deeply comforting transition. They can hate Loki. They know how to do that. They are good at it. This is the ancient, sacred power of the scapegoat. The term itself comes from a specific ritual described in the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus. 2 goats would be brought before the high priest. One was sacrificed to God. The other, the scapegoat, had all the sins and impurities of the entire community symbolically placed upon its head. It was then driven out into the wilderness, carrying the people's collective guilt away with it, leaving them ritually cleansed and purified. The gods of our story, in their terror and confusion, are now performing a psychic version of this very ritual. They are gathering all the unexplainable phenomena, all the terrifying paradoxes, all the maddening inconsistencies of their crumbling reality, and they are heaping them onto the head of the one God who is conveniently absent and already condemned. Loki is no longer just a murderer and a trickster. He is now the divine vessel for their existential terror. He is the goat being sent into the wilderness of their blame. The stolen day, says one god, his voice gaining confidence. It must have been Loki's magic, reaching from his prison to unbalance the sun. The fraying threads of fate, says another, has found a way to poison the loom itself. The madness of Januvis, they all agree. Loki must have whispered paradoxes to him until his mind broke. Each new accusation makes them stronger, more certain. They are rebuilding their reality on a new foundation, a foundation made of their shared hatred for the trickster. It is a flimsy foundation, but it feels infinitely more solid than the void of doubt they were floating in just moments before. The irony is a blade that twists in your own gut, so you, the listener, know the truth. You know of Apateon. You know that Loki, for all his crimes, is innocent of this. You see that their relief is a delusion, their anger a misdirection. They are aiming all their divine firepower at a decoy, while the true enemy continues his silent, invisible demolition of their world, not only unopposed, but actively aided by their willful blindness. Apateon could not have designed a more perfect shield for himself than the god's own desperate need to blame his rival. There is a bizarre artifact described in a lost edict poem, tool of divine justice called the Guilt Tally. It was a string of rune-carved stones, one for each of the major gods. When a god was found guilty of a crime, their stone would grow heavy, pulling the whole string taut. After Baldur's death, Loki's stone had become so heavy it rested on the floor. Now in the Great Hall, one of the Aesir suggests consulting the tally. They bring it forth, and they find that Loki's stone is no heavier than it was before. It is weighted with the guilt of murder and mischief, but not with the new, ambient guilt of a universe coming undone. They stare at it, confused. The evidence does not fit their new, comforting narrative. And so, in a final act of collective self-deception, they choose to ignore it. The tally must be broken, one of them says, and the others eagerly agree. It is easier to believe their infallible instrument of justice is flawed than to believe their convenient scapegoat is innocent. They have their villain. They have their cause. The cold, existential horror is gone, replaced by the familiar fire of a vendetta. They can now act. They can double the guards on Loki's prison. They can weave new spells of binding. They can spend their energy on a problem they can see and touch, a problem they have already solved. They feel powerful again. They feel in control. And Apateon, in his silent, empty kingdom of non-being, has never been safer. He has turned the collective might of the Pantheon into his own personal security force, a force dedicated to making sure everyone is looking in the wrong direction. They are beings of substance, of action, of presence. They cannot comprehend an enemy whose power is absence, whose victory is silence. They are looking for a wolf among the sheep, never suspecting that the real threat is a disease that is making the sheep forget they are sheep. And so, the question that echoes through the now boisterous hall of the gods, a hall filled with the false confidence of a misdirected rage, is this: when the only thing holding your world together is a shared lie, how long until the lie itself becomes the only truth you have left? The breaking of Januvis, the god of knowledge, was the final silent scream the Pantheon could not ignore. His shattered mind, now a babbling font of paradox, was a testament to a threat they could no longer dismiss as Loki's distant mischief or a series of unrelated cosmic glitches. The fear that had been a cold, creeping mist in the halls of the gods now coalesced into a singular, terrifying certainty. They were facing an enemy whose nature was utterly alien to them, an entity that did not fight with armies or challenge with strength, but that simply unmade. The time for whispering in shadowed corners was over. The time for a direct confrontation had arrived. You are in a place that has never known a mortal eye, a nexus point where the roots of Yggdrasil intertwine with the foundations of Olympus. Here, the chief gods of the pantheons have gathered. It is a grim, silent assembly. Zeus is there, but his thunderbolts lie dormant at his side, their power seeming irrelevant. Odin is present, his one good eye scanning the faces of the others. But his gaze holds no wisdom, only a deep, weary uncertainty. Dewari, her regal pride replaced by a taut, brittle fear. Frigg, her grief for Baldur now dwarfed by a larger, more cosmic dread. Poseidon, his mastery of the deep feeling like a small and petty thing. They are not preparing for a war. They are a team of surgeons preparing for an impossible operation, a group of physicists about to probe a hole in the very laws of their science. Their goal is to confront the source, to give a name and a face to the nothingness that is consuming them. But where do you travel to meet a god who has no domain? Apateon has no throne, no kingdom, no address on the cosmic map. So their journey is not outward, but inward. They must travel to the place where he was born, the gap, the conceptual space between realities. You feel yourself pulled along with them as they begin this terrifying pilgrimage. They close their immortal eyes, and together they let go of the anchor of their own reality. The sensation is one of falling, but not downwards. It is a falling away. The solid marble of their hall dissolves. The sounds of the cosmos fade, replaced by a silence so profound it has a physical pressure. Colors bleed out of existence, leaving only shades of gray, which themselves fade into a perfect, uniform black. They are stripping away the layers of the grand illusion, peeling back the painted sky to see the raw canvas beneath. They pass through echoes of discarded possibilities, a flash of a world where the Titans won, a whisper of a pantheon ruled by a different king. These are the ghosts that Apateon commands. Finally, after a journey that takes an eternity and no time at all, they arrive. They open their eyes, and they see nothing. They are not in a void, which is at least a definable space. They are in a state of pure non-existence. There is no up or down, no near or far. It is a perfect, featureless, and absolute emptiness. It is the architectural embodiment of a paradox, a location defined by the absence of location. This is Apateon's throne room. Show yourself. Zeus's voice booms, but the sound is wrong. It has no echo. The sound travels from his mouth and is simply gone. It is absorbed by the nothingness, erased as if it were never spoken. He, the god of the sky, whose voice is the thunder, has been rendered mute. Odin, ever the seeker of knowledge, tries a different approach. He casts a spell of true seeing, a powerful rune of revelation designed to pierce any glamour, to reveal any hidden form. The rune flares brightly for a second, a desperate spark of order in the absolute chaos of non-being. But there is nothing to reveal. The spell illuminates only more of the same perfect emptiness. And then it, too, is extinguished, its energy consumed without a trace. It is here they remember a legend of a bizarre and useless artifact, the etheric compass. It was a compass whose needle, forged from a fallen star, did not point north. It was attuned to a more fundamental principle. It pointed towards the greatest concentration of will in any given realm. In Asgard, it would spin and point to Odin's throne. On Olympus, it would aim true for Zeus. They brought it with them on this journey, a desperate hope to find a direction. As they entered this non-space, they looked at the compass. The needle did not point. It did not spin erratically. It simply dissolved, turning into a puff of iron-scented dust, because it was trying to point to a being whose very nature was the absence of will, of presence, of anything that could be measured or located. Now, a new terror grips them. They are in the heart of their enemy's territory, and their greatest powers are as useless as a whisper in a hurricane. They cannot fight what is not there. And then they get a response. It is not a voice, it is not a vision. It is a thought, planted simultaneously with perfect clarity inside each of their minds. It is a simple, devastating question. Are you sure you? Are you? And with the question comes a feeling. For a horrifying instant, Zeus remembers being a mortal farmer, his hands calloused from the plow, his heart full with love for a wife whose face he can't quite recall. Odin remembers being a simple storyteller, blind in both eyes. His only power, the tales he tells to children in a forgotten village. Hera feels the phantom weight of a child in her arms that she never bore, a love so fierce and real it tears her divine soul in two. They are each given a single, perfect, and utterly seductive glimpse into a life they could have had, a truth that was discarded. It is the full power of the Eidolon mirror, weaponized and aimed directly at the core of their identities. They recoil in psychic agony. They have come here to fight a god, but they find themselves fighting the very definition of their own selves. This is not a battle. It is a philosophical dismantling. Apateon does not need to defeat them. He only needs to hold up a mirror to the infinite possibilities they are not, and let them be crushed by the weight of their own singular, arbitrary existence. They flee, not from an attack, but from an idea. They pull their consciousnesses back, scrambling for the familiar shores of their painted reality, the comforting solidity of the great lie. They reappear in their hall, gasping, their divine forms flickering as if they are about to lose cohesion. They have confronted the god of nothingness, and they have discovered the most terrifying truth of all. Their enemy cannot be fought. It can only be understood, and to understand it is to go mad. They have looked into the abyss, and the abyss has shown them not a monster, but a mirror. They are utterly, completely defeated. Not by a force greater than their own, but by a logic that undermines the very concept of force. And as they stand there, trembling in the silent hall, a final question hangs between them, a question that will now dictate their every action. When your enemy is a paradox that cannot be fought, when your reality is a lie that cannot be trusted, and when your own identity is a story that can be edited at any time, what in all the shattered cosmos could you possibly do next? You are back in the Nexus Hall, the place between worlds. The silence here is no longer the calm of divine surety. It is the dead, flat silence of absolute defeat. The greatest of the gods are slumped on their thrones, their forms flickering like dying embers. Zeus's hand is limp on his thunderbolt, its power a forgotten comfort. Odin's gaze is fixed on the middle distance, his wisdom a useless weight. They have just returned from the abyss, from confronting the god of nothingness, and the confrontation has broken them. They've not been wounded. They have been invalidated. Their enemy is not a being, it is a concept, and the concept is winning. The air is thick with the ozone of their terror. They have realized that every act of power they perform a thrown lightning bolt, a whispered spell, a shouted command is an act of creation, in addition to reality. But their enemy's power is subtraction. How can you fight nothing with something? How can you fill a hole that is infinitely deep? It is like trying to drown a fish. Their very nature, their divine strength, is utterly, hopelessly useless against an entity that simply unmakes the battlefield on which they stand. They are kings with no kingdom, warriors with no enemy to strike. They are facing the ultimate checkmate. Days, or what passes for days in this timeless realm, slip by in this state of paralytic despair. They are trapped. To accept the truth of Apateon is to accept that their reality is a lie, a path that leads to the gibbering madness of Januvus. To fight Apateon is impossible. To do nothing is to allow the silent, creeping erasure to continue until they, too, are forgotten footnotes in a story no one is left to read. They are cornered not by an army but by a philosophical absolute. It is Athena, her face ashen, her eyes burning with a cold, desperate light, who finally speaks. Her voice is not a call to arms, but a surgeon's diagnosis, delivered in a whisper that cuts through the despair. "We cannot fight him," she says, her words falling like shards of ice into the silence. To engage is to be dismantled. To resist is to be defined by him. We have only one option. It is unthinkable. It is a sacrilege against our own nature. But it is the only path. All eyes turn to her. Hope is too much to ask for, but a path, any path, is a lifeline. "We cannot defeat him," she repeats, her voice gaining a terrible, chilling strength. "So we must uncreate him. We cannot kill a god who was never truly born. So we must ensure he never was. We have been living in his lie. We must now create a greater lie. It's a lie so vast, so absolute, so powerful that it overwrites not just a memory or a law or a history, but the very existence of a divine being." The other gods stare at her, their minds struggling to grasp the scale of what she is proposing. She is not suggesting a war. She is suggesting a collective, cosmic act of gaslighting directed at the universe itself. "We will call it the Great Erasure," Athena continues, her voice low and hypnotic. "Every god in every pantheon must agree. We will pool our divine will, every iota of our creative and destructive power. and we will use it not to attack, but to forget. We will perform a targeted damnatio memoria on a cosmic scale. We will erase every record of his name. We will magically redact every memory of his influence, including this very conversation. We will heal the cracks in reality he created, not by understanding them, but by collectively agreeing they were never there. The stolen day? A mass hallucination? The madness of Januvus? A tragic, isolated mental collapse. The fraying of fate. A temporary flaw in the loom that has since been repaired. We will create a new, cohesive, and unbroken history of the universe, and the one single unifying principle of this new history is that Apateon never, ever existed. This is the unthinkable pact.
Oh.
It is an act of supreme divine hubris, a lie to end all lies. To accomplish it, they must use an artifact that has been sealed since the dawn of time, an object considered too dangerous even for the gods. It is the dark counterpart to the Anel of Souls. It is the Codex of Oblivion. The Anel records what is. The Codex, a book with pages of solidified shadow and bound in chains of pure entropy, enforces what is not. To write a name in the Codex is to channel the focused, annihilating power of non-existence. It is a tool for erasing mistakes from reality. They had never dared to use it on a living being, let alone a god. But there is a terrible price, a cost that Athena does not hide. She will leave scars, she warns, her voice heavy with the weight of her own proposal. We will be erasing the cause, but the effects will remain. The universe will be left with phantom limbs, with inexplicable aches and pains. The doubt he planted will not vanish. It will simply become causeless. It will become a permanent, low-grade feature of consciousness itself. Mortals will be born with a nagging, baseless sense that something is wrong with the world. They will invent new gods, new demons, new conspiracies to explain this feeling. We, the gods, will have gaps in our own histories, events we cannot explain, ancient sorrows for which we have no cause. We will be choosing to live in a clean, well-lit room with a sealed door, knowing that on the other side of that door is a terrible foundational truth we have all agreed to forget. We will be trading a terrifying certainty for a comfortable, inexplicable mystery, silence. Profound, echoing silence as the gods absorb the sheer, monstrous audacity of the plan. They must become the ultimate liars to defeat the god of lies. They must mutilate their own history, their own memory, to preserve their sanity. They must choose a broken, nonsensical reality over a coherent one that is unbearable. Slowly, one by one, they nod. Zeus, his pride shattered, agrees. Odin, the seeker of knowledge, agrees to an act of ultimate ignorance. It is the only way. They will fight the abyss, not by filling it, but by pretending it isn't there and by forcing the entire universe to join them in the pretense. They will commit the perfect crime against memory, against history, against truth itself. The pact is made. The gods have found their path. Not a path of war, not a path of victory, but a desperate, terrifying path of collective, self-inflicted amnesia. And as they prepare to unseal the Codex of Oblivion, a final, unspoken question hangs in the dead air of the Nexus Hall. A question that will haunt the new reality they are about to create. What new and terrible things will crawl out of the God-shaped hole they are about to burn into the fabric of existence? The great erasure is complete. Apateon, the god of nothingness, has been reduced to less than nothing. He has been redacted from the cosmic script. The gods feel a profound, if puzzling, sense of relief. The universe feels stable again. The sun rises and sets with perfect metronomic precision. The loom of fate weaves its threads with unwavering confidence. The library of Januvus is once again a place of perfect, if incomplete, order. The war is over. But it was a war that no one remembers fighting, against an enemy no one remembers existing. And now, in the quiet aftermath, the scars begin to itch. You are walking through the divine realms in this new, edited reality. At first, everything seems right. But the longer you look, the more you notice the subtle, inexplicable oddities. These are the phantom limbs of a forgotten truth, the scars left behind by the surgical removal of a god. The universe, in its desperate attempt to heal the God-shaped hole in its narrative, has generated strange, nonsensical tissue to fill the gaps. You are witnessing the birth of the divine Mandela effect. You visit the great hall of Asgard. The gods are celebrating a victory. The bards are singing a heroic saga. A tale of a great war against a powerful but unnamed shadow that threatened to unmake the world. They sing of how the gods, through their unity and strength, banished this shadow. The story is stirring, heroic. But it is full of holes. It has no villain. It has no climax. It just ends. The gods listen, and they feel a surge of pride, but also a faint, nagging sense of confusion. Like they are celebrating a victory, they can't quite recall winning. You travel to the grotto of Nemesina. The goddess of echoes is calm now, her obsessive quest forgotten. But she is surrounded by a new and bizarre phenomenon. In her grotto, certain sounds now produce what mortals will one day call a phantom echo, a faint secondary echo that is heard only by certain people and only some of the time. It is the lingering sonic ghost of the overwritten reality, a resonance that no longer has a source. Likewise, her pools of reflection are now prone to creating eidetic phantoms, momentary flashes of images that are not there, glimpses of the world as it was before the great erasure. These phenomena are now simply accepted as a strange, mystical quirk of her domain, their true, terrifying origin completely forgotten. You stand by the river Styx. The river god is still the solemn guardian of oaths, but his power has been subtly altered. An oath sworn on the Styx is still binding, but there is a new, forgotten loophole. An oath can be broken if the promise itself is based on a false memory. It is a useless loophole, for who could ever prove such a thing? But it is there, a permanent, invisible crack in the foundation of divine law, a scar left by the erasure of a god who weaponized that very concept. The most poignant scars, however, are within the gods themselves. They are afflicted with a kind of cosmic PTSD for a war they don't remember fighting. You see it in their eyes. You see Zeus, in a quiet moment, rubbing his temples, trying to shake off a phantom headache of shame for a moment of cowardice he can name. You see Odin staring for hours at the well of Mimir, feeling a profound and frustrating sense of ignorance, as if a whole continent of knowledge has been walled off from him. He knows there is something he is supposed to know, but the thought dissolves every time he reaches for it. There is a bizarre, recurring dream that now plagues the sleep of the gods. In it, they are all standing in a circle, holding hands, and in the center of the circle is a book made of pure darkness. They feel a sense of immense shared purpose, and also of profound, soul-crushing guilt. They always wake up just as a single, unreadable name is being written in the book, their hearts pounding with a terror for which they have no explanation. These are the scars of a forgotten memory. The universe has chosen a comfortable lie over an unbearable truth, but the truth has a way of leaving ghosts. The fear of Apateon is gone, but the effects of his existence have become a permanent, inexplicable feature of reality. The doubt, the paranoia, the feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with the world, these things are now woven into the fabric of consciousness itself. Their origin, a complete and perfect mystery. Mortals will be born with this existential ache, this nagging sense that they are living in a fallen, flawed world. They will invent stories of original sin, of a paradise lost, of a golden age that is past. They will create new gods and new demons to try and give a name to this baseless feeling of cosmic disappointment. They will never know that they are simply feeling the scar tissue around a wound in reality, a wound left by the uncreation of the forgotten god. Apateon is gone, but his greatest lie remains. And his greatest lie is this: the lingering, unprovable, and now eternal suspicion that the world you live in is not the real one. He has been erased, but he has left behind the very doubt that was his nature. A doubt that is now a permanent and incurable feature of the universe. And as you survey this new, scarred, and subtly broken reality, a final, chilling question takes root in your mind. Is a god truly gone if the very essence of his being has become a fundamental law of the new creation? Or is this, in fact, his ultimate victory? The decision has been made. The unthinkable pact is sealed not with a handshake or a sworn oath, for what is an oath in a world where truth itself is a variable? but with a grim collective silence. You are there, a silent witness in the Nexus Hall, as the gods prepare for their final, desperate act. They are about to perform surgery on the soul of the universe, and the scalpel they must use is an object of ultimate dread. From a vault sealed with spells of anti-existence, they retrieve the Codex of Oblivion. It is a book that seems to devour the light around it. It has no cover, for it is not bound in leather or wood, but in solidified entropy. To touch it is to feel the warmth drain from your fingertips. Its pages are not paper, but thin, flexible sheets of absolute nothingness, so black they make a starless void seem bright. And the inkwell beside it contains not ink, but a shimmering liquid paradox, the very essence of a moment that never happened. To write a name in this book with this ink is to retroactively unmake it. It is the ultimate act of cosmic redaction. Athena, her face a mask of cold resolve, opens the book. A wave of profound silence emanates from its pages, a silence so deep it feels like the death of sound itself. The gods flinch. They have wielded the power of creation, of destruction, of life and death. But this is the power of uncreation, and it feels deeply, fundamentally wrong. They join hands, forming a great circle around the Codex, a living conduit for the immense power they must now unleash. Zeus, Odin, Hera, Poseidon, and all the others. They close their eyes and you feel the shift as they begin to pool their divine will. It begins as a low hum, the combined energy of 1,000 divine minds. But this is not an energy they are projecting outwards. They are pulling it inwards, focusing it down into a single, infinitely dense point of pure negation. The air in the Nexus Hall grows thin. The light from distant realities begins to warp and bend around them, as if being sucked into a black hole of intention. They are gathering every memory, every record, every trace of Apateon from the entire cosmos. They are pulling on the threads of his influence, the memory of the stolen day, the fabricated war, the madness of Genuvis, the phantom snow on the mountain, the stolen glory of the fisherman Hylas. All of it. Every last trace is being drawn into this circle. Then, Athena, acting as the focal point, dips a stylus of petrified shadow into the ink of non-being and begins to write. On the first page of the Codex, she inscribes a single name, Apateon. The moment the name is complete, the universe breaks. It is not an explosion, it is an implosion. It is a wave not of energy, but of forgetting. You feel it wash over you. For a split second, you have a perfect, crystalline memory of the god of lies. You remember his nature, his deeds, his power. You understand him completely, and then the wave hits, and it is gone. Not just the memory, but the memory of having the memory. There is a name on the tip of your tongue, a concept you were just contemplating, but it dissolves into mist before you can grasp it. You are left with a strange, hollow feeling, a mental echo in a space that is now perfectly, completely empty. You know, you have forgotten something of immense importance, but you have no idea what it was. And the harder you try to remember, the more the blankness solidifies. This wave of perfect forgetting ripples out from the Nexus Hall at the speed of thought. It washes over the sanctum of the Fates. They are frantically trying to repair their glitching loom, their minds filled with the terror of their unseen editor. The wave hits them, and they blink. They look down at the loom. The fraying threads are now smooth. Impossible knots have untangled themselves. The severed thread of the undying king is now neatly cut. The loom is perfect again. They feel a profound sense of relief, but they do not know why they were so worried in the first place. The memory of the flaw and of their fear is simply gone. The wave washes over the shattered spire of Genuvis. He is on the floor, babbling about a sky that is both blue and not blue. The wave hits him and he falls silent. The agonizing paradox that broke his mind is erased. He slowly gets to his feet. He looks around his library. The discordant, maddening music from the lyre of resonance has ceased. It now hums with the perfect, harmonious tone of pure logic. He feels a deep and profound sadness, a sense of a great and tragic loss, but he has no idea what he has lost. He is sane again, but his sanity is built around a gaping, God-sized hole in his knowledge. The wave washes over the grotto of Nemesina. She's staring at the reflection of the mountain, her mind reeling from the discovery of the grand illusion. The wave hits her. She blinks, her heart pounding with a nameless dread. She looks at the reflection. It is perfect. She looks at the mountain. It is perfect. She looks at the diopter in her hand, a diagnostic tool she hasn't needed to use in millennia. She feels a sudden, inexplicable wave of grief and terror, so powerful it brings her to her knees. But she does not know why. Finally, the wave washes over the mortal world. In a great library, a historian is reading a scroll about the heroic King Alasta. He frowns. The text seems clumsy. There are awkward sentences, references to events that don't quite make sense. It reads like a bad translation, a story that has been edited by a committee. He has the strange, nagging feeling that a name is missing. A character has been written out of the story. He shakes his head, dismissing it as poor scribal work. The ghost of Hylas has just become a little more transparent. Back in the Nexus Hall, the gods open their eyes. The Codex of Oblivion is closed, they feel. Relieved, the great threat, the source of their cosmic anxiety, is gone. They do not remember Apateon. They do not remember their pact. They only know that a terrible, nameless dread that had been plaguing them has finally lifted. But they are not the same. There are gaps. Zeus feels a phantom ache of shame. For a moment of cowardice he cannot recall. Odin feels a profound sense of ignorance, a feeling that a vast and critical field of knowledge has been walled off from him. Hera feels the echo of a love for a child she never had. The great erasure is complete. Apateon has been uncreated. His name, his memory, his very existence have been surgically removed from the tapestry of reality. The universe is whole again, but it is a flawed wholeness. It is a story with a crucial chapter ripped out, leaving the plot with inexplicable turns, and the characters with motivations they no longer understand. They have defeated the god of lies, but they have done so by turning his greatest weapon upon themselves. And now, they must live in the new, edited reality they have created. A reality filled with strange, unexplainable scars. The question that hangs in the quiet, amnestic air is no longer about a forgotten enemy, but about the nature of the wounds he left behind. When you cut a piece out of the fabric of reality, does the whole ever truly heal, or does it simply scar over? You are standing in the quiet, scarred reality that the gods have built for themselves. The great, nameless dread has lifted, replaced by a low-grade, chronic ache of cosmic mystery. The universe is stable, if nonsensical. The story of creation now has several pages missing, but the binding is strong. And in this new, edited world, one name echoes louder than ever before. It is the name of Loki. With Apateon erased from existence, a convenient vacuum has been created in the pantheon of cosmic villains.
Ow.
All the strange, lingering anxieties, all the inexplicable glitches, all the phantom memories of a war never fought, they now have only one possible source: Loki, his file. Once closed with the finality of his binding, is now reopened. He is no longer just the murderer of Baldur, is the prime suspect for every single thing that feels wrong with the universe. The scapegoat has been promoted to the archvillain, the single, unifying source of all cosmic malice. This is the great final irony. Apateon, the god of erasure, is forgotten. Loki, the god of presence, is remembered with a ferocity and a focus he never earned. His reputation is magnified 1,000-fold. Every myth is now reinterpreted through the lens of his boundless treachery. Why did the sun hesitate on the stolen day? It was not a cosmic glitch. It was a powerful cursed Loki cast from his prison, a test of his bindings. Why did Januvus go mad? Loki whispered riddles of chaos to him through the rock until his mind shattered. Why did the fates loom falter? Loki, through his children, Fenrir, Jormungandr, Hel somehow found a way to gnaw at the very threads of destiny. Loki is remembered because his lies were comprehensible. You can understand the theft of a necklace. You can understand a spiteful insult. You can even understand a murder born of jealousy. These are human and divine vices. They are tangible. They have motives you can grasp, consequences you can measure. Loki's lies were additions to reality, loud, theatrical, and messy. He left fingerprints, witnesses, and a trail of chaos that could be followed. He was an enemy you could see, fight, and, most importantly, blame. His evil, however great, was a known quantity, fit within the rules of narrative. He was a character that gods could understand. Apateon, on the other hand, was none of these things. His power was subtraction. His motive was a paradox. His nature was incomprehensible. A god whose power is to make you forget is a narrative impossibility. A villain who wins by making you believe he never existed is a story that cannot be told. The minds of gods and mortals alike are not built to accommodate such a concept. Faced with an enemy who was a walking sentient plot hole, they chose to write him out of the script and give all his lines to the villain they already knew and understood. There is a final, forgotten artifact that illustrates this perfectly. It is called the Chronicle of Villains, a great and terrible tome in which the deeds of every adversary of the gods are recorded. Before the Great Erasure, it contained two major sections. One was a sprawling, chaotic chapter on Loki, filled with stories of pranks, thefts, and murder. The other was a single, terrifying, almost blank page, on which was written only in Apateon, a single sentence: "He is the one who unwrites." After the erasure, the gods consult the chronicle. The page for Apateon is gone. It is not blank. It is simply not there. The book goes directly from the chapter on Loki to the chapter on the fire giants. But the chapter on Loki is now twice as long. All the strange, abstract, reality-bending crimes that once belonged to Apateon have been magically, seamlessly appended to Loki's record. He is now credited with the madness of Genuvis and the near unraveling of fate. His list of crimes has become a grab bag of every inexplicable evil in the cosmos. Loki's tangibility is the key to his infamy. You can picture him, you can hate him, you can tell his stories. He is the perfect enemy, the perfect scapegoat, because he is present. He exists, his children exist, his punishment exists. He is a solid, graspable evil, Apateon, a being of pure absence, could never be remembered because there was nothing to remember. He was a thought that erased itself, was a story that denied its own telling. And so Loki is the one who is remembered. He is the god whose name survives as the ultimate symbol of deceit. He is the one whose story will be told and retold for millennia, his evil growing with each telling as he absorbs the blame for the sins of a forgotten, greater power. He is the lightning rod that draws all the fear and hatred, leaving the true source of the storm utterly invisible and unremembered. The final bitter question that settles upon this new reality is one of justice and memory. Which is the greater curse? To be bound in a cave, tormented for all eternity, but to have your name remembered with fire and passion as the greatest villain who ever lived? Or to be so powerful, so absolute in your victory, that you erase yourself from existence so completely that no one, not even the gods you broke, ever knew you were there at all? You have seen the gods choose a comfortable, broken reality over an unbearable, coherent truth. You have seen them trade a known, chained villain for an unknown, formless dread that now permeates their very being. And you have seen how Loki, the loud, tangible trickster, became the great scapegoat. His name forever branded as the ultimate source of evil, absorbing the blame for the sins of a god no one can remember. The great erasure is complete. The story, it seems, is over. But it is not, because the scars remain. The doubt, the paranoia, the inexplicable feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with the world, these things were not erased. They were merely rendered causeless. And they have had millennia to trickle down, to seep from the divine consciousness into the mortal soul. Apateon is gone, but his influence, his very essence, has become a permanent and defining feature of the human condition. We are the children of the great erasure, living in the subtle, broken reality the gods created. We feel the phantom ache of the god-shaped hole in our world every single day. We're no longer on Olympus or in Asgard. You are here now. In your room, in your car, on your evening walk. You feel it, don't you? At low grade. Constant thrum of anxiety, the baseless but persistent feeling that things are not as they should be. It is the signature emotion of the modern world. We have given it many names: existential dread, anomie, malaise. We have built entire philosophies around it, from the absurdism of Camus to the deconstructionism of Derrida, philosophies that question the very existence of objective truth and inherent meaning. These thinkers were not just creating theories, they were unknowingly diagnosing the scar tissue of the universe. They were tracing the edges of the hole left by Apateon. His power is no longer wielded by a divine entity. It has become an ambient force. It is the quiet, creeping suspicion that the institutions you are told to trust are lying. It is the phenomenon of fake news, where reality itself becomes a matter of partisan debate. It is the rise of a culture where your truth and my truth can exist as valid. Contradictory alternatives, a world where Janus's madness has become a societal norm. We are all babbling oracles of our own subjective realities now. And what of the Eidolon mirror, that cruel artifact of discarded possibilities? It has been shattered into a billion glittering shards, and we all carry one in our pockets. You call it your smartphone, you scroll through it, and it shows you not what is, but what could have been. It presents you with an endless, curated stream of other people's perfect lives, their perfect vacations, their perfect relationships. It is a machine designed to generate regret, to make you feel that your own real life is a single, flawed choice among an infinite number of better, happier alternatives. Every pang of envy, every moment of dissatisfaction you feel while staring into that little black mirror is an echo of Apateon's power, a whisper from a ghost you will never know. Loki is remembered. We love his stories. We are entertained by his theatrical mischief, his clear-cut villainy. He gives us a target for our anger, a face for our problems. We create movies and books about him because his evil is a narrative we can understand and process. He's a comforting kind of monster. But Apateon's legacy is the silent, scrolling anxiety that grips you in the dead of night. It is the conspiracy theory that sounds just plausible enough to make you doubt everything. It is the filter bubble that creates a perfectly tailored, internally consistent reality just for you, cutting you off from a shared consensus. Loki gave the gods a war they could fight. Apateon has given us a peace that is indistinguishable from a quiet, internal, and unending war against our own certainty. A final, bizarre piece of historical evidence. In the 19th century, archaeologists excavating a forgotten temple in Mesopotamia found a strange, smooth stone at its center. It was made of a material that absorbed all light, and when it was first unearthed, witnesses claimed it emitted a low, discordant hum that caused feelings of intense paranoia and self-doubt. The artifact, which came to be known as the Whispering Stone, was sent to a museum, but it vanished in transit, leaving behind only a few frantic, contradictory descriptions. Was it a remnant of Apateon's power? A piece of the broken lyre of resonance from Janus's shattered spire? Or just another mystery? Another unexplained data point in a world full of them? Apateon was defeated. Gods erased him so completely that they have no memory of their greatest enemy or their most desperate act. But in doing so, they allowed the very essence of his being, the silent, corrosive power of absolute doubt, to become the background radiation of our universe. He is no longer a god we can fight. He is the air we breathe. And so the final chilling question is not about the past, but about the present. It is a question you must ask yourself. The next time you feel that nameless modern dread, that suspicion that the world is a counterfeit, and you are a ghost in your own life, is that your feeling? Or is it simply the final, perfect, and eternal echo of the forgotten god of lies? The story is told. The epic has reached its conclusion, and the weight of these cosmic doubts can now be set aside. The air in the room, once thick with the tension of crumbling realities and divine despair, begins to soften. The images of shattered spires and fraying looms fade like mist in the morning sun, leaving behind only the quiet stillness of your own reality. A reality that is solid and real and yours. The whispers of forgotten gods are just that, whispers, carried on the wind of a tale told in the dark. Let the chill of the void recede, and feel the simple warmth of your own presence, the steady beat of your own heart, a rhythm that is true and unbroken. The journey to the heart of a cosmic lie was long and arduous, a descent into the very nature of doubt. But all journeys must end. The purpose of such a story is not to leave you in a state of paranoia, but to look directly into the heart of a great fear and see that it is, in the end, manageable. The gods found their solution, however flawed, and the universe, for all its scars, endures. The quiet ache of modern anxiety, when seen through this mythic lens, becomes not a terrifying anomaly, but a shared and ancient inheritance, a story in which we all play a part. So, let the final echoes of the tale fade away. Let the images of Loki bound and Apateon erased dissolve back into the realm of myth from which they came. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the solid ground beneath your feet. The ancient mountains you imagined at the start of our journey are still there, their peaks calm and silent against the coming dawn. They have witnessed all these stories, and they remain. The tension is over. The tale is complete. Rest now. The gods have found their fractured piece, and so, for tonight, should you.